At this time, I will call this special meeting to order. Are there any public comments at this time? Has anyone signed up? Dr. Ball, do you know? Okay, thank you. Okay. Seeing none, the next item on the agenda is to consider the Level 4 employee complaint appeal brought by Ms. Angela Ortiz Pichardo. Did I say that right? The Level 4 appeal will be heard in closed session pursuant to Sections 551.074 of the Texas Government Code, as Ms. Pichardo is complaining about actions by district personnel. Prior to starting the grievance appeal, the board, pursuant to Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, will consult with its legal counsel in closed session concerning the grievance appeal process. After the legal briefing is concluded, I will call for the parties to the grievance to come into the closed session. The time is now 4:31 p.m. So we are now in the closed session. We are back on the record in open session at 5:31, having returned from closed session. Does any board member have a motion regarding the grievance presented by Ms. Pichardo?
I move to deny the Level 4 grievance filed by Ms. Pichardo, as the grievance was not timely filed per board policy.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Board members, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. The motion to deny the grievance at Level 4 passes. This meeting is now adjourned. Oh, this part of the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you. Yes, we're going to stay for training. Thank you.
Mr. Board President, could we please take a small break? A recess?
Yes.
Please tell us.
Okay. While we're eating, please proceed to entertain us.
I sure will.
Oh, we have it right here.
No.
Left, right, and then
Yes.
pointer.
You want this?
I have two more.
You
Got a pointer
want
on
mine?
this thing right here. I can call on some people if I need.
Okay.
I can actually. Well, I appreciate you all having me out. Again, you have options for team building. I appreciate you giving Casby a chance to come to spend time with you today. Putting your association to work. The more we get to work for you, the better we get to make our offering. We get to improve the service that we offer to you. As you know, this is part of your search process. We give every board a transition workshop when they use TASB Executive Search Services. And part of that is to get you all an opportunity to have a conversation about what's important, what's coming next. A lot of teams use this as their team building credit. As such, there are a few requirements. I'm sure you have veteran board members, you know what the requirements are for team building. My goal tonight is to fulfill those in a way that I hope is engaging, and maybe even in some ways a bit challenging. I'll give you a heads up on that when the time comes. But so again, I want to just say thank you. I appreciate you all giving me a chance to come out here. I want to hear from you in between bites, if you don't mind. So what I'm going to ask is just a very simple question, one that I'm pretty sure you could have predicted, and that is, I want to know what compelled you to either run for the board or to accept an appointment.
Well, I'm starting. I've been involved in the district for many years, and my wife and I have had 3 children. We've got one more left, one boy left. He's a senior. go through the system. And we've got one at UTSA, our older girl, one at UT, go Longhorns, go Runners, and then our boy, he's a Dragon. And we got to see firsthand the great things that the district has to offer for our children and our parents and our community. And I hate to say the term bought into the system, but it's true. It's for real. So I started joining committees as our kids grew through the system, and decided to take that last big step and throw my hat in the ring, and fortunately it worked out for us in May to where we can get a great board together and build off of those years that I saw our children, so we can offer for every senior class that walks that stage, there's a first grader coming up. So we got to continue the hard work for all the kids. Yes, sir, thank you.
Well, I'm actually a graduate from Southwest. I graduated in '96, and but I wasn't originally from here. My dad's in the Air Force, from California. But from very early on, you know, we had no family here. So as I started to grow up, a lot of my friends that are my friends still today that I've known since 3rd, 4th grade have more become my cousins. Their parents have become my aunts and uncles. And you know, we always noticed, I lived in Big Country, which is closer to the north side, so I still had a bunch of friends there, but everybody here, I could tell it was like more like a family. And then the more I grew up and got into high school, it was, you know, all the parents that came out with the help of the booster clubs and the school board, and you always saw the school board members out there talking to everybody, and everybody knew them and knew about their families, and it wasn't just all those people, you know. When they had students here that went to school, or you hadn't heard about their kids that went to school, and it was just prevalent that you could tell this was just a, you know, family culture. And everybody always talks about, oh, you know, high school shouldn't be, you know, the best time of your life and all this and all stuff, but for me, it was the best time to meet my family, because it seemed like that. Because even when I joined the Air Force, I left and I was stationed in Mississippi, and we had problems. We were part of Katrina. We lost everything. Dr. Versa was one of the few that he reached out to me from the district. All family members I knew from out here, you know, friends of mine, Mona reached out to me. I received gift cards from the district and people from different clubs in the district asking if we need clothes. And so when I got out of the Air Force, I knew, you know, I want to go back to that district. And then once my kids started in high school and everything, and I did the booster club, and then I was asked if I'd like to run, that's definitely, I mean, if I can get on the board and make any decisions that even one kid feels this way about the district the way I do, like that it's family, then that means the world to me. So that was the reason I got on. I wanted to give back to what this district did for me and my family, so.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Hi, I was originally courted for an appointment on the board, and at the time I was Booster Club president for athletics, and I would see all walks of life, you know, students that came from different backgrounds, and some of the students that we helped by giving them a meal, offering them a meal while they were, you know, during their athletic period because they had no money. And when I was originally courted for an appointment, I thought about it a lot, but one of the things that compelled me to say yes is the fact that I would be making a difference in the lives of a lot of students, many of which need the support, need the voice. And to me, that was very important because I had stayed home for so many years, and it actually made me feel useful. It made me feel like I had a lot to give, that I didn't just have to be home. So it was an exciting time for me to know that I would come here and I would be able to make a difference in the life of others. And also I had a son who was had a disability, a learning disorder, and I thought that, you know, as I had gone through the process with him, I found a lot of bumps, I found a lot of roadblocks to how I could get him into the special education department. And we've come a long way since then, I can actually say. So being a part of, able to make decisions that affect those students that are kind of falling between the cracks because they're either not completely disabled, they look normal, but they have other issues that are hidden. It was a great time for me to be able to say, you know, this is happening with my son. Is there anything we can do to help this particular student population? And it was another reason that it compelled me to say yes. So I had various, not special interests, not personal interests, but interest in allowing me to be a voice for all students that are facing such difficulties.
Wow, you're making me go back in time. Why was I compelled to, you know, I came to Southwest via Air Force as well. You know, I joined the Air Force to see the world, and I was sitting back home, San Antonio, Texas.
We've heard this story many a time.
Yeah. You have, because you've been around a long time too. But you know, it was 10 years of volunteerism. My kids were first grade, kindergarten, PTA, Southwest Pony League. And then one day, I was on the district committee. And then one day, Mr. Juan Alvarado asked me, Sylvester, you need to run for the school board. A gentleman was stepping down because he was moving out of the district. And I did. And 23 years later, I still have the passion and the love for this district. When that ends, I'll end. I'll stop doing this, but I still have it. I've been blessed to work with, 4 or 5 superintendents, you know, probably 15 board members. You know, most have been very supportive. My time at TASB, you know, really helped, and I was very supported by the current board members at that time, because as you know, TASB takes a lot of time away from local involvement. But it's been good, and I'm still here, and hopefully we'll be here for a little while longer.
Well, I have 4 sons that went through the system here. When they were in elementary school, I coached with the board, who was the board president at the time, Mr. Frazier. We were coaching together. And I just never thought about being on the board because historically we've had a very good school board. There was just no reason to, you know, throw my hat in the ring because everything was running really well. And then one of them was going to retire, and so Mr. Frazier asked me if I would consider running. And my dad told me not to run. He said, never get into politics. First decision you ever made. Well, then he passed away the following year, so then 2003 is when Mr. Frazier asked me again to run. So I thought about it a lot, and I just thought there's no better way to serve the community than to be on the school board. And so I threw my hat in the ring, and 20 years later, here I am. So, I mean, it's quite an honor to be on the school board. A lot of responsibility, but a lot of rewards.
And me, well, I kind of fell into this thing. They kind of recruited me to run for the board. Then Mr. Frazier come to my house one day and said, Sullivan, we need you to run for the board. I said, what's that? You know, I don't know what the board is. He said, you're at all the functions, and you know, your kids are going through the system, and just we want you to run for the board. We think you'd be a great board member. So I've been on the board 18 years, and it's the best thing I've ever done.
That's it?
That's it.
Say the best for last, guys.
Short and sweet,
Yeah.
baby.
Me, I'm actually been a community member since 1977. Went to school here, just like being in the Air Force, my dad was in the Air Force, we moved here in 77, so I went to the elementaries here, junior high, graduated in 88. Married my high school sweetheart, and she's an educator at Southwest for 29 years now. And then I was fortunate enough to get on board in 2011 as a district announcer, which I still am today, on a volunteer paid basis now, unfortunately, but that's okay. I just felt it was the right time for me to jump on board. I saw an opportunity and I said, you know what, I want to give back to the community in a different capacity. So here I am.
So the question is a little bit different. You could have taken your talent to other field, but you chose education. Why?
Why did I choose education? I chose education because of things that happened through me, to me, I guess, in regards to school was always really challenging for me. School didn't come easy. I had that, most everybody's heard my story in regards to, I had a counselor that told me college was not for me. Had an English teacher that said that the problem was that my mom had taught me Spanish, and it was all jumbled up in my head, and that's why I was struggling. My mother was also an educator for 37 years, so saw her go through a system that she loved. So education was just in my blood. It just was me. What's unique about this district is that in 1995, I got the opportunity to come here. Drove here, I moved to San Antonio in 95, and I remember driving down this way really thinking that I was lost. That time, 95, I didn't have a cell phone. I don't know if anybody else did, but I know I didn't. And I remember just all the cornfields and thinking like, there's no way there's a school district. And I still remember Mary Ryan, you know, she was at HR. This district is so good to people. So good to people. I was able to go from a teacher all the way when I left as an assistant superintendent. When I left, I completely remember crying, and everybody knows I'm a crier. And my mother said, look, if you don't want to, and I was leaving because I got a superintendent job. So you would think I would be like all cloud nine, happy and everything. But I was crying because I didn't want to leave my family. I wasn't leaving a job. I was leaving my family. And this, people here have always been family. When I left, James Sullivan, Ida Dogan, Sylvester Vasquez, and Fulmer, now they were all on the board. I knew James Gonzalez through another route because of the run that he had for his daughter and got to know him and his wife. But immediately, Mr. Cabello, Mr. Diaz, everybody has just become family. They treat people well. It's true what they say.
Good. How do you all like to do breaks? Check in top of the hour, halfway through, or does it matter to you? Just go and you'll signal to me?
We'll try.
Yeah.
All right, and then next question. Are you okay if I stand right here, or do you want me to stand somewhere?
No.
You're good. Perfect, because I don't like to be too far away. So I really appreciate you all sharing that bit of insight. Again, I mean, I've just met most of you. I've seen a few of you here around at conferences. But I think it's an important question that every board member has had to answer for themselves. And I think as I go around the state, I have the blessing to work with different boards, and I find out some of the common themes that unite leaders in education. It's moving and it's compelling, and it's important because we might have a different group of kids, but the end result is we're preparing tomorrow's youth. And I think it requires a lot of thought and commitment and passion, as you all have clearly indicated. But I've asked this question, so I've been at TASB, it'll be 9 years in March. I've asked this question for about the last 7 or 8 years to well over 500 trustees. I quit counting. I just quit counting. But I want to share some of the funny responses that I've gotten. You maybe heard that saying, there's a bit of truth to every joke. I want to share some of the funny responses. One trustee told me that he ran for the board because he had this temporary doubt in insanity, this lapse in judgment. He said, I thought it'd be a great idea. I ran for the board, I got elected, and then I realized, man, that was tough. What have I gotten myself into? At the time I was campaigning, I prayed about it, I had this sense of clarity. It seemed like it was the right thing to do. But now I must have been crazy to think that I could do this hard job that was bigger than me, and it required so many tough decisions. But got on the board, been working it ever since, loves it. Like many of you said, it's hard work, but it's rewarding, right? Another trustee told me that he was compelled to run for the board because he would come to the meetings before he got elected, back in the day when he was still just a regular human. And he compared himself to just being a regular human before he got elected. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, people now think I'm superhuman, that we have all this power, that I can do stuff and that we have all this money and we're getting paid, even though we don't get paid. I cannot convince them that we're not getting paid under the table. He says, they think we don't hire the best people we can get to apply. They think we take the best application off the top of the stack, throw them in the shredder, and hire the bottom of the stack. And we just get ribbed for it at the meetings or in the store. They have no idea we hire the best applicants we can get to apply, we can attract. It's just hard work. And I said, what did it sound like? And he said, you know what? It sounded a little bit like me before I got on the board and learned what it was really all about. He had all these grand ideas of what he was gonna change, what he was gonna do. Another trustee told me that he had attended the meeting, he would come to the meeting, just kind of listen, make public comments every so often. And one night he left the meeting, he was walking to his car, parked out in the end of the parking lot. Someone walked up behind him and said, hey, you, run for the board. And did a little J maneuver and kept going the other way. He looked around and saw the back of a person walking away, had no idea who it was. He said, the person never said my name, just said, hey, you, run for the board. He said, Orrin, I didn't know if that was a threat or a recommendation. So I just ran for the board. And now I'm up at the board table in the meetings, having a good time, thinking, whoever that was, look, I did it. Whatever you wanted me to do, I did it. So call off the plans, whatever you had. But same scenario. Got in there, loved the work, been doing it ever since. But the one that really made me laugh was an attorney. True story. He's an attorney in one district and a board member. And he had another attorney friend in a different district who's also on the board. And he said, I want to answer that question for my friend. I said, okay, what is your friend's response? What compelled your friend to become a board member? He said, as an attorney, he looked at his life and realized he had too many friends. He said, I ran for the board, I lost some really good friends and made some new enemies, and I restored the balance to my life. Now he's joking, but there's a reality to it. It's hard work. Not a lot of folks really know what the work is about until they get on the board, and they stick with it for a number of years. But there's always this effort to educate the community, to kind of bring them up to speed on what's happening, to give them the truth of the matter, to be transparent. And there's also the balance of your own time, your own growth and development. But I thought it was kind of funny to think about some of the common challenges. Most of them expressed that they ran for the board just to have an opportunity to serve and give back, kind of like what you mentioned. At the end of the day, though, there's still work to be done. And there's some funny stories out there here and there. So my next big question to you all, as we launch into team building, what is your definition of an effective board? I have my own definition. It's very simple. It's back to square one, and I'll share it. But I'm open to changing my definition based on how you might respond. What is your definition of an effective board?
I think just honesty and respect for one another.
So if they're honest and respectful.
It's okay to disagree. As long as the respect is there, and on the short time that I've been on the board, I get that from our current board members. If I have something to say, I'm pretty quiet for the most part, but if I do voice something, I feel that they do listen, you know, and it makes me feel good.
Good.
You know, you're part of a team,
Yeah.
and I really feel that that's what it's all about. If I have something different to say, I know that you're gonna at least listen to me and maybe take it in. Maybe there's something there that you weren't thinking about, or vice versa. To where, well, maybe, you know, I think he's wrong, but you put it out there and I listened to it and have an open mind on it. I was like, you know what, that makes sense. I think that's all about being a good team, a solid team. And I thank y'all for that.
I'm glad you mentioned that real quick, because that's really well founded. When you look at a lot of the research about high-performing teams, two things they do well. One of them is listen to each other, and they give everyone a chance to talk. They share the floor pretty well, almost equal, right? Nothing's ever perfect.
Right.
They do a good job of sharing. And then when they do listen, they expand upon the ideas, just like what you mentioned. And I like that you said it makes you feel good like part of the team. There's this concept called closure in this research called the sociology of school boards, and they talk about that very thing, how board members feel like they're part of the process and they're building something together when they have a chance to kind of do what you just mentioned. And the outcomes are way, way better than for teams who don't quite understand how to trust and listen and share. I'm glad you
Because
mentioned that.
in a team, I'm sorry, I'm gonna start ranting
Sure.
off. In a team, it's not all about
Right.
me. You know, it's related to a football team. It's the coach, it's the players, it's, you know, whatever the case may be, but it takes everyone, all of us together can, I have a little, I'm self-employed, I have a small little company, and on my signature strip, on my checks, I have a little quote that says, together we can move mountains. Together, not, I can't do it by myself. So I'm glad to be on a team that's on that page. Because again, you know, we have a senior class that walks that stage, but we gotta give the same equity to the first grader coming in, and then some. We can't keep it the same, we gotta make it better, because it's growth.
Because the world is evolving.
That's
Things are
right.
changing.
So we have to be willing to change for the betterment of all the kids that are coming. These kids are a whole lot smarter than we are in our generation. But we have to see that and accept that, and say, okay, how, at least for my kids, I was like, man, I can't, these kids are so intelligent. You know, how can I move that? How can I be a better coach and have these kids understand, well, Dad ain't that dumb after all, you know? So it's all about just being able to motivate and being part of a team. I think it's a good foundation.
What else?
I think being able to, when a situation comes up or there's something that we're being asked to vote on, when it's not a 7-0 vote, to still be unified in the decision. So, I mean, we don't always agree. I mean, I've been on the board 20 years. There's been a lot of arguing and, you know, in closed session about the policy or whatever it might be. There's a lot of arguing, but then when you come out to vote on something, you have to respect that the majority has voted a certain way.
Absolutely.
And then to not be, Mr. Frazier, who was our president for over 30 years, always said you never want to go out in the community and say, well, I voted no. Because then it just develops, the community stops trusting you. There's just a lot of bad things that can happen when you don't support each other. Because you're not always going to get your way. You might think something's super important, and the other 6 don't. But you don't go out and sow discord in the community when you vote.
And me being on the board 18 years, I really enjoy, I mean, we can agree to disagree in executive session, but like I just said, we come out, we're a team of 8 with our superintendent.
Yeah.
And that's what I enjoy so much with this board. We just get along so good, and we're really clicking, so everything works good.
I like that right there. That said a lot. Those little acts right there. What else?
To me, an effective board gives and takes. Sometimes you agree to disagree, like James says, and we respect each other's opinions, we respect each other's thoughts, and we also need to continue growing. We need to be available to continue learning so that we can be more effective, so that we can be more united. I think the most important thing is to respect each other. And I know that we do very well on this board. That's one of the reasons we're very successful. So to me, that's important, you know. If you don't like what I say, that's fine, just respect my opinion.
And as part of that team of 8, always remembering that we give our superintendent direction, you know, but we don't tell her what to do with that, or how to do it,
Sure,
you know, and we don't watch over her daily, you know. We hold her accountable when the time comes, when the data comes in, but, you know, we give her direction, we get out of her way, and we let her, and she's the only person we hold accountable. You know, we don't hold our principals accountable, we don't hold our teachers accountable, you know, and I think this board understands that, understands everything that's been said, and that's why this board is working so well together.
So my definition is very simple, and it wraps up all your definitions. If you were to go through the Education Code, chapters 11 and 39, or sections 11, sections 39, and you look at the Administrative Code, probably like around 25 in other areas, you'll find your responses in one way or another clearly listed. There's a requirement to be collaborative. There's a requirement to respect the body corporate, like you mentioned. there's a requirement to work together for the end achievement of all the students, right? To collaborate with your superintendent, to respect the roles and the boundaries, like you mentioned. You know, we decide kind of that big picture of what, we collaborate to decide that, but we only have one employee. And I love that you mentioned specifically, the board's role isn't to direct a principal or any person who stands up and gives a report, it's just that one person. And so my simple definition is, a board is effective if it does what its intended purpose is. And if you read through the education code, it's so clear. Now, I don't recommend, you know, you just pour over it all in one sitting. And I know you have experience on the board, so I'm pretty sure you know the roles really well. But for a younger trustee, think about a new trustee who's wondering, how do I determine what my role is? How do I know if I'm gonna be effective? I just want to present to every district I have a chance to work with during team building sessions, that's kind of a requirement, to just honor that role as it's laid out in the education code. And here's why I'm so excited about that. I'm gonna share some board research, some governance research, what we are learning today since the late 90s, and you'll find that it lines up with the education code almost 99.9%. The only exceptions are the unique trainings that the law requires that there's just no basis for yet in the education, in the board research. For example, some very specific trainings like cybersecurity or trafficking, that kind of thing, right? There's no basis for that yet. But I'm gonna show you how it lines up. But I want to put that out there. Does it do what it's intended to do? In other words, imagine someone who decided, you know what, now that I'm a trustee, I mentioned all the examples I mentioned in the beginning, I'm gonna make this role what I want it to be. What are the chances of being effective? Little to none. I can reinvent the role, I can create it and bend it into something that it's not really intended to be, and it probably won't work. In fact, there's no instance in the research or in my observations as a board consultant where I see that working for a superintendent board team. Them reinventing the wheel, making something new out of it. But what I do see instead is when they understand their respective roles, just like you all said, the superintendent understands his or her role, the board members collectively understand their role, and they work together, you see success after success, right? A lot of growth, a lot of development. So what I want to do today as we go forward, I want to talk about some of the roles and responsibilities. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, for the board members, you've been on the board a number of years, some of this is going to be very elementary. I'm just telling you right now, you're like, seen that 1,000 times, I know it. Great, it's supposed to be, because team building is a review, right? The law says discuss roles and responsibilities, but we're not gonna go down the education code and just read it. I'm gonna show you some real life scenarios, and I'm gonna forewarn you, for some districts it was kind of tough, but I admit I took a risk. I take a risk anytime I do this kind of session, because again, we're in this together, and there's a chance, depending on the situation that a district encounters, that scenario might say, you know what, we can have one like that. So I want to apologize ahead of time, but I also want to challenge you, because I know you're a solid team. I know that for sure, there's no question about it. So I want to challenge you with these scenarios, not in terms of how difficult they are, but just a chance for you to face something that, again, if you live that scenario in your 20+ years, then, again, I don't know how it's going to make you feel. I say that because I've done this a few times now, and there were a couple boards that thought, this was us 5 years ago. And I said, I had no idea. It wasn't my goal. I just know the challenges that I'm sharing up here are quite common. Again, these I collected over 9 years, and I lined them up that, you know, so they fit with the research. It was a way to see the research come to life. Does that make sense? So again, if there's any bit of unique connection to this, I assure you, your board president or your superintendent did not tell me, hey, Oren, get these scenarios because we're dealing with that. If there's any similarity, it's 100% coincidence, all right? So keep that in mind. But I want to start by showing you the governance literature. What do we know based on research? I think for a board with a lot of experience or better members, I think it'll be a good refresher to appreciate this aspect of it. And then we'll look at the governance literature. We'll apply it to the real life scenarios. Again, these are Texas situations that we've observed and that I've worked with over the 9 years. And then after that, we'll answer a few big questions. You have a new superintendent, fairly new. I want to know what you need from her to be successful in your oversight role. And I want her to be able to say what she needs from you all to be successful in her management role. Now, I know these conversations have probably taken place before, but it's always a good opportunity to kind of reassess as often as possible. And then we'll move towards a brief discussion, kind of a preview of how that first evaluation might look. If she's identified priorities, I'm sure you have identified some priorities, how are we in terms of bringing those together and marrying those together and determining which ones would be top priority because of the district's needs, the campus plans, the district improvement plans, and then what comes next on the priority. So without further ado, let's jump into the governance literature. Anyone recognize this guy? His name is Tom Alsbury. Let me tell you about good old Tom Alsbury. In the early 90s, people were asking this question, do boards really make a difference? Can they really impact learning? Why do you think they're asking that question?
Because I'm sure there's some boards out there that just kind of going through the system, going through the,
Okay.
not taking account, things that do, like being accountable.
Sure, there were some that just didn't seem to be effective, they're just doing whatever.
Right.
Why else might someone ask that question? Even for a good thing, why might someone ask that question?
Because boards do affect.
So they do
Student
affect,
learning.
right? And part of the challenge is that they're so far up, right? And if you're in a large district, you're definitely high up the chain, right? And so some people thought, well, they're too far from the classroom. We know what teachers do to impact student performance. We can begin to see what principals do. And assistants do, we can kind of see they're still closer. But board members are always so careful to respect the boundaries. Sometimes in some communities, they couldn't go on the campus without getting some side eye, right? But there was just this notion that maybe they're too far up the chain. Maybe their hands were too tied because they're too far up. He recognized that there was a negative impact that boards could have, and it was clear. When board superintendent teams did not respect the roles, did not honor the roles, when they did the opposite of all the stuff that you just said, right? You mentioned all the right things. When boards did the opposite of it, they were negatively impacting student performance. And he found specifically this trend. A board member runs for the board just to get rid of another board member. All the reasons you told me you ran, solid reasons, right? Obviously, to promote the vision, to give back. My kids were here. I went through the system. I want to make sure every kid is going to be served. I want to make sure we constantly grow because a senior now is going to graduate, go into the world. That incoming first grader is going to have a whole different set of needs, and we got to challenge our system to make sure it grows and serves that incoming first grader, right? They didn't run for those reasons. They ran just to get rid of another board member. I don't like that board member. I don't like his face. I'm going to run for their position, right? When that happened, it sometimes, not always, it could lead to superintendent turnover. With the new superintendent comes new policies, potentially new changes, especially if the board is not strong and stable, right? New superintendent brings in new changes. If it's a solid board, solid system, that superintendent comes in, looks around, assesses, recognizes there are already great systems in place, hit the ground running. But imagine having to rebuild. Anyway, long story short, with all that turmoil, all that distraction, all that revamping, staff members don't feel supported. They're leaving or they're distracted at best, and student achievement begins to decline. How long would you think this process takes? How many years on average would you guess?
1.
1?
Yeah, it don't take long.
So
2.5 years?
2.5 years. So between 2 and 3 is what he noticed. But this is for a system that is not completely unstable, but just getting along. It can't happen as little as 1 year. And I'll tell you about a case that along that it took less than a year, right? But they're already kind of declining. So you're all right in that range. Not very encouraging, is it?
No.
Well, golly, people are wondering if boards can be effective if they're too far up the chain to have an impact. This guy comes along and says, well, the research shows they can have a negative impact. Anybody satisfied with that? I'm not. So one of the students said, whoa. We can't leave it right there. If they have that much influence to bring a system down by not respecting the roles of the board of superintendent, those 8 are in the board, surely they can use that same influence for good. So one of his students, Mary Delagardelle, said, I'm gonna go research it. He said, yeah, you go find out. And she set out to answer one key question. How do leaders in moving systems, like yours, right? How do they differ from leaders in stuck systems? Very simple question. Long story short, she found some rural schools that were all kind of lower on the economic spectrum, so that you could have a control. She began to look at those who were meeting the goals, whether they were set by the state or set by the community, so the local goals that were optional and then the mandated goals. And again, controlling for all those variables as much as possible. She said, these folks are succeeding and moving forward. What is it about them? What do you think might be one thing she found?
A good school board.
A good school board, absolutely, right? No, that's a very important point. Because, you know, people think if it don't matter, you can behave any way you want. It's not the case. You can bring it down. A good school board. What kind of stuff do you think they did to demonstrate how good they were? The school boards and central office employees. How do they speak about their teachers? Yes.
Positive.
Absolutely, positive. What about the students? What do they say about the kids?
We got the greatest kids.
Got the great, exactly that, right? What do you think they did when they recognized that a lot of their kids were on free or reduced lunch? What do they say about the kids' status in terms of their ability to learn?
A healthy body is a smart body.
Healthy body, smart body.
It's no different than any other that has more means.
Right. Every kid has limits. Just because they're, you know, of lower financial means doesn't mean they can't learn. Even the rich kids have limits. We don't believe our system can fully tap the limits of any kid. We're gonna push as far as we can, right? In other words, we're not gonna limit what a kid can do. We're gonna open the doors wide up, take the roof off, let them rise as high as they wanna go. Time and again, you saw leaders, like you said, the good school boards, they spoke like this. We have excellent teachers. And because we believe so highly in them and so think so strongly, we're gonna give them every opportunity to grow and learn through professional development. We're gonna let their input rise up to the board level when we're making goals. We're gonna hear from them. We're gonna be supportive of them. We're gonna build a supportive workplace for them. Right? It went on and on and on. But in the stuck system, as you would imagine, they spoke just the opposite. And I'm gonna share a few quotes specifically. One board member said, well, the problem is they won't turn the TV off at home. Right?
What?
Now, let's be real. I don't want to say to paint this perfect rosy picture. If kids are watching too much TV at home and not doing homework, yes, that is a problem. But as a board member, do you have any control over what happens at home? No. Overseeing this school, the only thing that you really have control over is the quality of program that you can build here through your superintendent. That's all we can control. Another one said, parents gotta send better kids to school. We gotta come to school better prepared. Is it easier when kids come prepared? Absolutely. It's so much easier. But we don't have control over that. All we can do is build supportive classrooms, the best workplace. So time and again, they saw these kind of statements. Now I'm gonna share something very, again, it's potentially sensitive, but we're all adults here. I watched a couple boards in Texas. Admittedly, they were having some struggles. And they were talking about where they were challenged. And one person said, we're here because our schools aren't doing well. We want to help them do better. And they said, why are the schools not doing well? And one board member thought about it, and the superintendent thought about it, and the response was, well, we can't read to them during the summer to combat summer slide. I can't take them on field trips during the summer to get them exposure. I can't make sure they eat a good, healthy meal so they come to school ready to test. There's just so many things out of my control. I kid you not, almost verbatim. And it was quiet in the whole room for a while. We were in a region service there. I won't say where. But one board member said, well, what can we do? And the whole conversation shifted. It's that mindset, what can we do? And that's what these boards and central office people have figured out. They didn't stop at what do we have, what are the limitations? It was what can we do? And then you see a whole different approach to problem solving. Creative ideas coming forward. So I can go all day, but I want to just put that out there. That was her big question. How do the leaders differ? Notice what she did talk about, the money or only the resource. That comes. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter. That would be foolish. But with all that, you still have to have this component. And the research shows that kids from well-to-do families still don't reach their full potential if they don't go to really high support school systems. So what they learned specifically, and I won't ask you to read a whole lot, this is one of the 2 topics I'll ask you to read. So if you don't mind, do a 2-minute, is that break? Okay.
No.
Oh, do a 2-minute read over this, and I'll explain what you're looking at in a second. Just a 2-minute read. Is there an extra?
think there's someone right here.
Right
You
here.
have one?
I have
It's
it.
coming. Matt,
Oh, thought you had it.
he was asking for me.
Take about 30 more seconds. Is anyone just itching to read a little more? Another 10, 15 seconds, you want to talk about it? I see a couple of heads still there. Are they the ones who read everything, even the fine print?
No, they're not very good readers.
I hope y'all don't mind me joking a little bit.
No.
So what she found was that when schools were turning themselves around, when there was school reform effort, a lot of the research showed that schools largely did things that fall in these categories. Depending on which study you read, you'll see the categories a little different. But these called 7 conditions, 7 levers, they noticed this very key detail. When board members, central office staff, and school leaders understood how these themes or concepts looked in their system, they were leading moving districts. In other words, as a board member, I know what shared leadership looks like in our system. I can tell you 1 or 2 ways how it's practiced. I know that our superintendent sets expectations for principals or assistant students, right? And they can go on and on, they'll tell a little bit about how it looks. So what I want to do is give you a quick pop quiz. But I'm going to let you all self-select. I want one person who's going to pay tribute to just talk about how one of these looks in their district. We won't let the superintendent answer yet. I know she's done a good job of keeping you all up to date, y'all have veteran experience. Just share in your own words, again, and these concepts, they're general, so you might not call it this, but just pick one of these 7 themes or concepts and then share how you think it looks in the district based on what you've heard, based on the report you've read, et cetera.
I think staff development, I think we've gotten, I don't think maybe like 10 years ago, I don't think we were that in tune with effective staff development. And so I think under Dr. Verstup and now under Dr. Ball, we have staff that listens more to our teachers as far as what effective staff development is. And it's not just this rote thing that, oh, you gotta have 10 hours, you have to, whatever. That they work really hard, and I think we are always very supportive of their staff development, even though, like, sometimes it costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right, and so you're like, $30,000, come on. But then when you hear their reasoning, and then Dr. Ball will say, I really feel this is important because of this. I think the board has really been very supportive in that, and I think what helps us to be supportive is we see the data from the teachers. Like, we don't like this. Okay, well, let's not do that, because apparently it's not working. So then, Dr. Ball and whoever whatever assistant soup is in charge of that area, I think that is super important, because if you provide good staff development, then your teachers get better, right?
Yeah.
Which means that the students are getting better, and then we all succeed, right? So I think we're good at approving when they ask for that, but they're also good at telling us why they want it.
And I like number 7, because Dr. Bertha, he was a real community, involved with everything else, but when we got Ms. Ball on board, she hit the floor running, and she had bit the lick.
Yeah.
She's all over our community, and everybody loves her to death. So she's doing a great job.
So, go ahead.
Well, I was going to talk on shared leadership. You know, I feel like I'm a leader of leaders. You know, we have 7 leaders up here at different levels. You know, some of us are growing more than others. Some of us may be sitting back a little more than others. But we have 7 leaders up here that understand each other and respect each other and work well with each other and support each other. And know that just because you don't have the title of president or vice president, you're still a leader amongst this group. And I think that's important.
So it's spot on. I want to start with the professional development comment. In this study, they found that the higher ups couldn't even talk about how it looked in their system. They did, and they asked the people who had gone through it, what did you learn last year that was effective at convocation or that big training? And they thought of like, it was not even memorable. They couldn't recall it. But what I'm hearing is that in this system here at Southwest, you all listen to the teachers, and based on their needs, based on their real life classroom experience, they're telling the leaders in the district, here's what we need to feel supported and equipped to do our job, and they're responding, and they're doing it. And then they're getting feedback from the data saying it's effective. That's huge, right? So just having that awareness. Because now when they come and say, we need 30 grand or 36 grand, we're like, it's a lot of money, but we know what the end result is. And I love that you said, we know if we build stronger, more capable teachers, we get better learning, better structure. There's a saying that a superintendent told me. And that superintendent said, we have a saying in the superintendent world, and the saying is, if you don't feed the teachers, they'll eat the kids, right? And so we gotta keep our teachers supported and fed and full of the right kind of stuff. Because think about it, they're pouring out every day. If you're running, you have to have fuel. If you're working, you gotta have fuel. You gotta be refilled and refueled. And so it's a perfect example.
Can I just share
Sure.
how excited I am that Mrs. Wilkins said that? Because this, one of my first things doing this is coming to the board and asking for money to redo how we did our new teacher training.
So important.
And we needed all our new teachers to come first. A lot of days, all the board members were there, and I think it was one of the best things that we did to start off the year. So I just want to say thank you for mentioning that, because that was something that we did revamp, and that's where it came from. Teachers told us, like, we need more training and we need it before we start the year so we're prepared. So it truly is like a perfect example.
That's good.
And part of that, I really appreciate, this is only my 3rd year, but how open, obviously before Dr. Ball, Dr. Burst, giving us permission, to talk to those people, but how open they are about, when they come and give us the data and they lay out the data. They're not afraid to, they're not fluffing everything. They're just giving us the straight data. They're owning up to the shortcomings. But they're also letting us know this is why sometimes we're coming up short. This is what we need to get better at this. And here's what we're doing great. And here's maybe we can adjust some stuff and get better. I just appreciate the fact that, especially when we get our board books and all that stuff, if there's heavy detailed information, they let us know, hey, you can give us a call. I need to know some more information about where those shortcomings are, or what you're presenting, or sometimes it's too detailed. Give me the the generalized version, so when I ask questions, we know. But I love the fact that we don't ever get fluffed, from what I've been able to tell. And everybody's willing to put out their shortcomings, but also their goals and their good stuff, and just let us make the decisions and where we can help them to get better.
Well, I can assure you that they're probably willing to do that because of the trust they have, and they know what they're not going to get from you, which is critical eye or overstepping the boundaries. Because I've seen enough districts where that's not the case. Presenters don't want to share things with the board because they're going to get grilled from that position, which is way out of the line. So it's a credit to the way that you all work if they're willing to come and show you the real data and be straight up about it. So you mentioned community involvement. Very big topic. So we know from looking more at Texas boards, and not just boards from other states, that community involvement tends to matter a lot to Texas districts. We don't quite know why that is, but it's important across the nation in all districts, all states. But for some reason, it matters more to Texans. And again, we don't quite know, but maybe we're smaller communities overall, tighter connection, but it tends to pay off. And remind me, sir, what your comment was?
Leadership.
Oh, the shared leadership, okay, good. It's the only way to make sure that you create stability across the system. Good leaders don't just grow people, they create good systems, and that withstands the test of transition. You ever see a leader leave and then everything crumbles? They didn't develop the people who were there, right? So that's what I was saying in the beginning, depending on how stable the board has been, will determine how much change is needed when that new superintendent comes in. If the outgoing one was not effective, it didn't create stability, the board hasn't worked that much harder. So good, you get the idea. We're gonna look at how these play out in real life. But Mary Delavardale, Harry Heiligenthal, two researchers who carried this work forward. I've had a chance to meet Harry on a number of occasions. He's been to Texas at least 3 or 4 times. I went to Iowa to go visit him and talk to him as well. We went as a team. So really great, solid guy. He loves to work down here in Texas. Has been very supportive of it in terms of collaborating and corroborating data for us. So here's the part that I promise you would be very elementary. So feel free to kind of take a break in your head, go to La La Land for a little bit. I don't judge, I understand you would have seen this maybe 100 times if you've been on the board, even 2 years, okay? But I'm gonna just bear with you right quick, just a quick connection between the research. So they start with the 7 conditions, and notice that these 7 conditions can be distilled down to 5 core areas of governance. And if you've been through ISO training, you'll recognize where this comes from, but I'm gonna ask you anyway, which one of these core responsibilities, they each have associated actions with them, but which category do you think has the strongest connection between what board members do, how they behave, and student outcomes or student achievement? I kind of already gave it away. Which one do you think has a high?
Responsible school governance.
Okay, it's close, but it's not the top one.
District accountability.
That's second. That's the number 2.
How about high
Yeah,
expectations?
there you go. You got it. High expectations, right? And so that just changes the way that people behave in your system. If your system really has high expectations, slackers don't feel comfortable being in the system. They're gonna find a way to get the job done, right? Kids even pick it up. The peer-to-peer culture is healthy. Hey, man, don't behave that way. Let's pick it up. That's not funny. That's not what we do. I've seen enough situations on that where it kind of blows your mind, where the peer-to-peer encouragement has seeped all the way down from the board, right? Just a
Can I
sense of
say
pride.
something real quick?
Sure.
So Mr. Diaz and Mr. Gonzalez have only been on the board for, what, 6 months? So everything you say is brand new to them.
Okay, good.
So you don't have to like
Good.
skim over it real
Okay, 'cause
fast.
I read the bios, I thought, yeah, but it's your first term, you're not a.
Yes,
return.
first term.
Okay, good. So these core areas, I'm gonna go through them just very briefly. It starts with high expectations. This is what Mary Delavardale found. Conditions for success mean everything from the environment and the culture you create to you making the funds and resources available, like for training. And I'll give you an example. And just again, I'm gonna share examples that I've heard, not to glorify a certain kind of behavior, but just for the learning experience. One board member once told me, I believe if a teacher is really talented, I could put them on the playground in a pop-up tent and they're gonna get the job done. And I said, that's probably true, but why should a teacher have to work that hard if you have the resources to give them?
That's right.
Right? And he said, good point. And so that's conditions for success. Does every kid need to go one-on-one technology? Probably. Did we do that and get our education without that stuff? We sure did. We had
Yes.
buildings, but guess what? Those are probably new when we were in them. So this idea of what boards do for their communities goes a long way. So conditions for success means ensuring there's a viable curriculum. It ensures there are systems and processes so that if you all get voted out in 5 to 10 more years, the board members behind you have a good operating procedures to look at. They're not having to reinvent and create stuff, right? Don't take the knowledge with you in your head, document it. And so that was all the different ways, or some of the ways you could think about conditions for success. District accountability, another big one. How do you think the board exercises accountability? What's the first step?
Goal, setting a goal.
Setting goals, right?
Set up goals.
And the needs assessment drives those goals for the new board members. When you are presented with goals, there's a good chance, like 99.9999%, that it's driven by a needs-based assessment. The campus improvement plan driven by a needs-based assessment. Whether it's a TAPR, environmental factors, community input, et cetera, those trickle up to the district improvement plans, again, all driven by needs. So by the time you get a recommendation for goals, or you're talking about a set of goals, it's not just goals that sound cool. I guarantee you there's a rhyme and a reason behind it. And so, yeah, to your point, when you adopt goals, you're ideally adopting a set of achievement objectives that will improve the district. The law says, for the new board members, that the board adopts goals, a comprehensive set of district goals. Your superintendent, with her team, typically looks at what those key performance indicators are, how far she thinks that we can go in our experience, in your professional experience, and they'll make some recommendations. As a board member, you gotta understand it, challenge it, vet it properly and professionally, and say, are these numbers gonna challenge our system, or are they gonna be easy? And chances are, it's gonna challenge us, right? We have this, right?
I think that's one of the hardest things for me being on the board is, I mean, like in my mind, my goal is 100% of our kids are gonna know how, you know, they're gonna have 100% on their reading, right? So when you see the results, sometimes you're like, you know, come on, right? You know, whatever percentage it is. So it's hard as a board member to, I can't set a goal, right? Because in my mind, I'm not qualified to set the goal, for one thing, because I don't know what it takes. I mean, I could say every teacher better teach their kid how to read by the time they're in third grade or whatever. So then we rely on the superintendent and her staff to set the goal. But then we as a board have to be willing to say, okay, if this is like attendance, our goal is to improve it by whatever percentage, right? Because we know it's tied to our funding.
Sure.
So then we tell Dr. Ball, we want our attendance to go up 2% at the end of the year, right? But we can't just say we want that. We have to understand, well, what is it going to take us to get that, right? And then to put the money behind it and say, if we're going to ask our teachers to get their kids to school, then how are we going to reward them if they get their kids to school, right? So not that money solves everything, but if we have a goal, it's hard. I don't know if y'all feel the same way, but it's hard for us to figure out. That's a great goal,
Sure.
right? Because when you see the rankings and you're like number 5, well, our goal's not good enough, you know? But to have the faith, which, I mean, I do, that we have the faith that our staff is doing the legwork to tell us what the goal should be, right? And then we look at it and say, okay, we trust that that's a good goal, but then we have to be able to do what because we're the purse string, right? So we have to be able to say, okay, we're gonna support you with this staff development, prizes, whatever it might be, to get to the goal. But that's one of the difficult things for me is goal setting.
And you're in good company. It is tough because you're asking a group that's responsible for the overall progress and growth of a very complex system to pick a few goals as a focus. When you all know there are a million things that happen. You pick one classroom and the needs in the one classroom could be 3, 4, 5, or 10 different needs, right? And different levels of performance or understanding. So imagine between 12 and 13,000 kids you'll have?
Almost 14.
14,000, okay, I'm sorry. 14,000, we gotta update AUMS. Think about how challenging that is, and you're right here to pick the right set of goals. But the confidence is that there are systems in place that are trickling down all the way down to the classroom level. And part of that system means that, hey, we ask our superintendent, how are we developing those campus improvement plans? The law requires you to adopt, right, those in the DIPs. But I want to say this to you, and let me ask you a question. Knowing how complex the system is and that every kid has different needs and they're starting at different points, and you mentioned it perfectly. How do we know that when we see that 5, that we shouldn't be frustrated, that we should celebrate, or we should step on the gas and go further? What principles, when it comes to learning, are important for you as a board? Just tell me in your own terms. Forget about the TEKS for a while. When you see a kid in your system, what do you hope is a basic outcome of that kid being in your system?
That they're successful when they that they're good citizens and they're kind. That's mine. To be kind and a good citizen and to be able to earn a living that you're happy whatever status you wanna have, that you've left our system capable of being successful.
So you left being capable. There's an implication there. What is it? You left,
That you provided them the stuff to be
you
capable.
provided them
Yeah.
stuff, right?
To be successful, yeah.
Successful. Did they come in perfectly capable?
No. They
Probably
learned.
not. So they had to grow and develop.
Yeah.
As a principal, that's the one thing, and yes, sir.
I was just gonna say that they continue wanting to learn.
Yeah.
You know, life learners, I think, is what we used a few years back, you know. They don't leave here like, oh, finally out of here. You know, that's it, I'm done. You know, that they continue wanting to improve themselves in their life.
Right. Any other comments?
I think for myself, on a personal note, it's preparing the kids, molding the children to be inevitably the future leaders, because if we form a solid foundation here as a team of 8, those examples, they have to stay back there somewhere in those, smart brains of theirs, because ultimately that's what they're becoming. They're becoming the future leaders, that we're gonna depend on them. Right now, they're depending on us, so we're passing the baton, so to speak. But it takes all of us to be able to do that, be part of the solution, don't be part of the problem.
Yeah.
And let's get these kids up there, because they're just gonna have to continue to build, go up that building block, as we build this pyramid.
Sure. I tend to be biased towards growth. And the reason is, kids don't fill out an application to get admitted. They fill out applications for information, so they can have all the data, but we're a public school system. And what that means is that in a class of 100 kids coming in, you could have 40% perfectly on grade level, 10% reading above, or, we have no idea. What we can do is see where they are now
The growth.
and push them to grow. If that means that they're on grade level by the end of the year, great. If that means they're grade level ahead, great. The point is, they're not the same as they were from day one. And to me, again, in my bias, that's a good system. For the newer board members, and the system has changed a little bit, but if you were on the board before, you know this already. Our accountability system really does reward districts for achieving growth in students. In fact, we had one system in place for the last 5 years. It got revamped, and it's tough because of what they're doing. You know the story. I mean, you could have been an A district last year and literally dropped down to a D because they took the measure here. You achieve at this level, it got you an A. All of a sudden, they said, we're going to move it. And they moved it after the results were in. That makes sense? So,
Yes.
like, oh yeah, we're here. We got 89%. Oh, that's good. 89% would have got you an A last year. Now they get you an D, right?
Yeah,
So
we
they
know.
move it, right?
We know.
It doesn't make sense, but we know.
We know that. So the point is, though, they're rewarding growth, though. So with your accelerated learners, House Bill 4545, those kids who were assigned to accelerated learning, they didn't meet the standard on the accountability system, there's a half-point bonus growth in there, a point here and there. So again, the whole point is they reward growth, and rightly so, because that's important. That's the one thing that every system does have more control over, not where kids are when they enroll in kindergarten and pre-K. So keep that in mind, growth is so important. But you all make that happen with your conditions for success. Community engagement, again, something we're trying to figure out time and again. The law does require you to get input, whether it's through site-based committee meetings or strategic plan, that kind of thing. There are opportunities, I'm sure, in your system where the community is engaging. Even the act of coming here to make a public comment during a meeting is a form of community engagement. And it's not uncommon for board superintendent teams to hear what's going on, to listen, to dig deeper, and to make changes because of that. Or you're proactively going out and retrieving information and feedback from the community in a number of ways. You mentioned responsible school governance. It's all so close up there, the top 3. This one has so much to do with just what each individual board member does to make sure the team works well, make sure they learn and grow themselves, make sure they do a high-quality evaluation, they participate in goals. Again, that they are really making sure that the things they do continues to put the school in the best light. If you think about how that looks practically, there are a few basic roles. Again, the law says that you adopt policy, typically at the recommendation of your superintendent. You're going to hire a superintendent, evaluate them, give them feedback. Do you all do one summative, or do you also have a formative mid-year kind of checkpoint in
Right
that
now, we
process.
do one
One.
summative, but
Mhm.
we've all discussed as a board that we need to improve our superintendent, evaluation. We had the same, we hadn't really had the need to really look at it because the people that were on the board had been on there so long, you just kinda knew.
They knew it.
Right? But now that we have new members, we have to, you know,
Good.
revamp that.
I think you all know that you adopt a tax rate in the budget that's gonna meet the needs that you have. And then, of course, the community engagement component. It's not well defined in a lot of districts, but some are finding ways to do it. For example, you probably heard about districts, and maybe you have one, that have a program where they educate community members on the role of the board. So if at any point they ever wanna run, they already have a bit of a head start. They aren't learning the first time they get up there. They call them ambassador programs, right? They just have them come in, listen, learn a few things. Kind of like what you did for local orientation, but they aren't board. So again, the options are just almost limitless. But it depends on how much time you have. If you can squeeze in more meetings, and they are quite busy. As your board president mentioned, the how typically belongs to the superintendent. So the board and superintendent collaborate, like you mentioned, what are those big goals, what's important? Superintendent might say, we're looking at the data and the reports, as I've been showing you all last year, we're still not there on reading. We're gonna need to have a reading goal. I'll support it by doing these things. The board listens, okay, how far do you think we can get? Superintendent might say something like, we use MAP, and we know historically across the nation that MAP kids get a growth factor, 50 to 60% of the kids meet their expected growth targets, so we're gonna shoot for 65%, right? Just some kind of way to justify it. And the board might ask questions. Oh, what's typical in a year? What is our neighboring district doing? And just different data points that you get to discuss around the goal setting, and then they'll make a recommendation. And we trust them, that's why we pay them, right? We hire them to do that. So they'll decide the plan to get there. Big one, make adjustments if they get the first round of benchmarks or beginning of the year assessments and they're way off from what they were last year, they might make some adjustments.
We use a lot of common assessments also.
Okay, good.
Because at the last board meeting, we shared some common assessment data with the board. And from that assessment, we know we need to make some adjustments.
Perfect. There was one district that said, we don't show the board that kind of data, it scares them too bad.
I think it did scare them. We had a lot of red,
Yeah.
but we needed to know that information
Yeah.
so then we could adjust and get better.
And it's not too uncommon. Think about this time of the year. We're just coming back from COVID and the summer. We've been in school a little while, but it takes a while to get in the routine. It's not uncommon to see a big dip in the beginning and middle year assessment and then recover. The one district I'm thinking about was like, oh, those numbers look horrible. And the superintendent said, no, whoa, hold up. I know this is new to y'all, but it looks this way every year. This is summer slide. This is kids terrified being on a new campus. There are so many factors they haven't found their groove yet. And they said, oh, okay, it's better. But that's what happened when they weren't used to seeing data, right? They got to see it for the first time and it terrified them. But they make adjustments. How does it all work together? Well, in the middle is where you evaluate that plan. This is where you sit down with your superintendent. It might be an informative checkup. It might be at the end of the year where you're evaluating it. Hey, we picked a goal, but was it the right goal? We really don't know why all the data can suggest and recommend one goal, but we didn't know if the code was going to hit, or if we had the right goal, or if there were factors way beyond our control. What do you think a good balance is on a superintendent evaluation between the specific actual number outcomes and the demonstrated judgment of executing a program? What do you think a good balance is? There's no set number. What do you think is a good balance?
I'm sorry, what is the question?
What's a good balance? Is it all 100% based on these specific outcomes and targets and numbers, and if you don't reach them, slash?
Oh.
Or is there a balance between, well, how did the superintendent demonstrate judgment and the ability to execute programs and to set up programs and monitor and shift? What do
You
think?
mean like 50/50
It's like
or?
a 50-50.
Yeah, and is it growing, is it climbing?
Sure.
Yeah.
And there's no perfect number. It's just the idea that there has to be a bit of a balance. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, cause I mean, it's hard to say, okay, your goal is 70% of our third graders are gonna pass their reading, right? And then we don't know what third graders were gonna, I mean, you don't know what they're coming in
Sure.
doing and how the classroom's made. I mean, we can hold her accountable for making sure that teachers have what they need to do their job and that they're being evaluated. but you can't just say, oh, they didn't meet it, so you're out.
Mhm.
So,
You know what I've seen that I really appreciate is one team, they would track their goals, and I sat down, we're doing team building. They have 4 years worth of goals. You ever work in Word and you see
At 7.
the changes tracked, ready for a break?
At 7, or let's do it now, let's come
We're gonna
back.
do it now then.
What, 10 minutes?
Yeah,
After-
let's do 10 minutes.
Oh, I was
Vamos.
just gonna say, finish what you were saying.
Okay, so real quick, you ever seen where they track the changes? You can look in 2020, this was a number, edited, updated for 2021. Just the fact that they were tried again, iterations, trying to find out what works. All that to say, in that case, the process was way more important than the actual number of the outcome, because we don't know, no way of knowing if it's the perfect number. But the process and the means to the end is what we can really hang our hat on. So take a break, 10 minutes from whatever time your clock says now. Is there an official clock on here?
no.
Okay, so 7:10.
Take it away.
It
On your
disappeared.
phone, 7:10. Those are pretty alive.
It disappeared one day, it hasn't been back.
We need a clock here. It's a
Get
joke.
one of those atomic clocks. You never just said it?
We had one, but
We had an atomic clock?
it
No,
broke
not an
and they haven't
atomic clock.
replaced it.
It was
And
a
now
click,
this building's gonna be torn down.
it was
so
a, it was a military clock, right, Daniel? The clock we had up there was a military
Yeah.
clock. It's the one we had in every.
It probably came from Kelly.
Probably.
I grew up with those ones that I thought.
Let me go to the restroom. Oops.
I know, he's such a dope. He's just on his phone. He's just like this. Right? I know, he's just a dope. And he's not even paying attention. He's on his phone. Put attention.
Put attention.
You know why we say put attention?
It has something to do with the Spanish-English
Well,
barrier?
Dr. Villegas' dad only spoke Spanish. And so he had trouble, like, his English was broken. And he would try to tell them something in English, and he was saying pon atención, but he'd say put attention.
Put attention.
So then she would tell us, put attention.
Just like what you said, different things, when it was all business.
He's so knowledgeable.
Oh, yeah.
$21?
20, oh, yes. Yeah, your shirt ended up brown, and it had to be long sleeve.
That's fine.
Okay, and mine is long sleeve also, because I couldn't get all the colors. I went to all these stores and I thought, we're getting long sleeve.
Yeah.
Some
No,
of us.
thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome. It's
gonna
gonna
be
be
much
cute. It's gonna be fun.
It is. It's kind of part of what, he's talking about.
Yeah.
We're building a team, and it's important that our community sees that.
Yeah. And in
It does make a difference.
a mature,
I haven't gotten with me
like,
yet.
respectful way, not like when he'd be jumping around like a dope, right?
I called you, I was all upset. I didn't know. I didn't like an idiot, and I took offense, and I'm usually pretty calm.
Yeah, no,
I'm
he's,
pretty calm. Mr. Frazier.
no, I let him have it. No, sir, nobody's gonna do that. And that's, when Yolanda Mayer Reagan, Mike, she was going on and on about it, and she was, I'm going to support me. I said, you know what, Mike has my 100% support. If he wants to run with somebody, he's gonna run with somebody. I can't, I'm sorry. He's earned our respect. She don't respect anybody.
It's all about me.
Oh, yeah, all about it.
He's one of my customers, so.
Oh, yeah? Really? Okay.
Trucking company, so.
He's
He might feel from me, so.
He's, looking at that little chart, and he says,
All
Cheers.
right. So the short version, kind of short and sweet, is as board members find themselves talking about what is they want, the big picture outcomes. They're probably in their lane, understanding their roles and responsibilities. When they get into how something is done, and again, it's not a perfect science, but it tends to be in that management domain. But there's always a bit of an opportunity to learn and grow. And so the best board superintendent teams just talk about how to navigate that space.
Before you go on, we're gonna try and be out of here by 8:30. It's supposed to be 3 hours, okay? But if you need to go to the bathroom, you know, you don't have to ask for permission. You're all adults. Just stand up and go.
Okay.
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 But evaluation, big component. The conversation is more important than anything, and you all with experience on the board, you know how that conversation goes at night when you're evaluating the superintendent. The conversation is an important part of it. Part of it is because you have to speak with one voice. When you come out of that room at a closed session and you give your superintendent a rating, right? It's the board believes you performed in this manner, right? So there's a lot of conversation, a lot of collaboration that goes into that overlapping part. Part of that, of course, includes the superintendent's self-evaluation, a discussion about why we rated the way we did. Talking to each other. If one of you rated high in one area and the other was low, you might be like, oh, why was it low? Because I didn't really hear about X, Y, and Z. They might say, it looked like this. Oh, yeah, right? But again, there's that exchange, like you mentioned in the very beginning. The more we listen and share ideas, the more we can expand upon it and grow. I would say if board members, superintendent teams can talk, if they master the art of conversation, to me that's more valuable than any other perfect plan you can create, because you have to be able to communicate and make adjustments. So that's a very big important part of it. If there was a Cliff Notes version.
And I don't mean to interrupt you, but just so you know, like, I welcome that. If any board member
Good.
wants me to do something differently or in a different way, they don't even have to wait till the evaluation.
Good.
They can go.
Would that be like in a one-on-one drop in, reach out to you, set up an appointment, have a conversation?
Sure, I want that. If you'll just call me, come drop by.
Or do you want us to put it on Facebook?
If she actually,
Put it on group meetings.
We're very fortunate that Dr. Ball, as well as our previous superintendent, has an open door policy, and she's always very welcome to,
And I
for
would
any
say a
of
lot of
us.
that goes back to probably y'all working hard to maintain a good, respectful relationship. I mean, just the demeanor, I can tell there's a lot of respect and professionalism on the board. I mean, it's pretty obvious. You get a sense of a feel when you go into a different community. You learn real quick. What's the difference, in your opinion, between something that's important compared to something that's urgent? How would you describe it in your own terms? Something important versus what's urgent? Or give an example, if you don't want to explain it.
Something urgent needs immediate attention.
Sure, you gotta resolve it right away.
Important you can work on. Important you can work on it, get to that goal.
Yeah,
Like security is urgent,
sure.
right?
Needs to be done now.
Bus
Improve-
accident.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
improving a test score, that's important.
Important.
But in my opinion, it's not urgent.
Y'all are too smart.
Plus, it's
Yeah.
something that takes over time. Important things sometimes.
Yeah, they take time.
Nailed it. And you know, I mean, again, there's no perfect scientific question, but I think when you hear board members who can just clearly share that, it makes a big difference. When we ask that question, sometimes you just get silence, like, I don't know. And I think they would know if they would attempt to answer, but maybe they just don't want to. But it's very important. My next question, which domain do you think, again, not always 100%, things can vary, which domain do you think board decisions and board work falls in? Is it typically urgent or is it typically important? Again, not 100% important. And why would you say that?
Well, because board is more long-term.
Sure.
It's not making the day-to-day. There are some things where it might be
An
urgent for her
emergency.
to,
Absolutely.
you know, but really historically, if we are, like during COVID, when there was decisions that needed to be made on the fly, we voted to give Dr. Verstup the authority to make those,
Absolutely, yeah.
you know, those, you had to do it instead of, hey, can y'all come and we're gonna
Work
meet.
on
if it's important, then we do expect a phone call, hey, we're gonna need a special meeting to decide this, but if it's critically urgent, then you have to have faith that your superintendent knows what you want, or what.
A lot of the
We had
urgent
an
things
incident-
fall under.
We had an incident last week that was really urgent, she gets the information out to us right away, and it's, she's Johnny on the spot with letting everything, letting us know what's going on in our district.
I was saying that urgent things usually fall under the admin to make those decisions. Especially if they know that we've given them authority to, like Ida says, to piggyback on what she said.
I agree.
Yeah, and if you have a good working relationship with your board superintendent, the superintendent, I think, has more ease in making a decision that's urgent, knowing that she has the support of her board, you know, and I think that's important.
However, I have heard that there are boards that want to be on every urgent decision and, you know, don't, it's not us, but I have heard of that.
So since you mentioned it, let's go there for a second. Boards have to take action, right? They have to take action officially. It has to be a called meeting, posted how far in advance? 72 hours.
3 days.
Tell me, and you mentioned already, when does an urgent issue need to be answered? Sometimes, right? Not always, but when is it? Immediately. Can you imagine, like, oh, we got an accident? Well, let's see if 2 people agree to put it on the agenda. Let's post it for 72 hours. Let somebody come up here and make public comment about it because they get to, and then that's not efficient, right? And it's not saying that you aren't capable of doing that job, making the decision. It's just saying that the law says that someone has to be in the captain's chair, making long-range decisions, thinking far out enough, so that the district doesn't just find itself 10 years down the road with no plan, no one at the helm, steering the ship, right? Guiding the ship. If you think about how long it takes to do stuff by board action, even when the quickest emergency scenario, it still requires a formal process, and there's a reason, because transparency matters. But an administrator can probably resolve that issue on the spot, right? A teacher can address that issue within an hour, potentially, depending on the nature of it. Again, I'm speaking generally, everything can have a little give and take. So if an issue comes up, I can pick on the newest board members. Oh man, they've only been on a couple months. I'm gonna get a hold of them, make them do stuff for me. They haven't learned to filter all the incoming noise yet, right? Just picking.
They already tried it.
They tried. But the point is, they had to come to you, and then we have the hard job of saying, look, I ran for the board because I care. I'm deeply passionate about your concern and your issue. I want to help, but there's only one way I can help. It has to come up to a level 3 grievance. It has to be a calm meeting, a very planned conversation. That's when I get involved. Now, that's just my role. I'm not apathetic. I still care about your issue, but you can probably get it resolved a lot quicker if you start with the person nearest the problem. Who does this problem involve, right? Before you even hear too much, who does it involve? A teacher? Talk to that teacher. If you don't get what you need there, go find that principal and take care of it. Anyone used to work out now before you got on the board, now you don't have any time left. But what about before? Maybe you're still working out? Think about your muscles. When you don't use them, what happens to them? They get atrophy, right? It's the same way in our systems. If we don't give our systems a chance to work out those muscles, they atrophy. Your teacher, and in all your systems, they need professional development, but they need a chance to solve some challenges with your community, face-to-face with the parent. If parents always used to come into a board member, teachers don't get to work out, right? The system doesn't get a chance to work. The process doesn't get to work. The chain of command gets weak and weak. Every link gets weaker. But I tell boards and superintendent teams, hey, tell every community member, use a chain of command, work it out, find out where the weak links are. Why? Because you might need to improve it. You don't want to leave here, turn this over to a new board member, and you hand them a system that has a weak chain of command where nothing gets solved. It's just constant, what do you call it, like a revolving wheel of just problems. Why are we not efficient, right? What are you gonna say?
I said hamster wheel.
Hamster wheel, yeah, that's what I'm looking for, that, yeah, spinning the wheels.
But sometimes boards that are not efficient can't even see it themselves.
They can't, and that's the challenge. You are blessed to be on the board that you're on. You're gonna learn that as you go to more trainings and hear about some stories. I say that kind of lightly, but it's the reality.
I think one of the things that, I think both of the new board members are really good at it, because they both called me
Good.
and said, hey, this is going on, and I've told them they need to talk to the principal, tell them to call Mona, get an appointment with Dr. Paul, something like that. Because if you as a board member start hearing all the community problems and then you say, hey, talk to me if you have a problem, I'm gonna be here, talk to me if you have a problem, you can create a very toxic atmosphere at a school, and it's not fair to the teachers, it's not fair to the principal, it's not fair because you're the one that's instigating the problem with the community, and
False
then
promises.
you're
False
trying to,
promises.
you're
False
trying to
promises.
hold that, and then the community is mad at the principal because they think, oh, well, this board member's behind me, I'm gonna go take care of it myself. But we, ultimately, I always say, you can call the superintendent secretary. If you haven't gotten the answer you want from the principal, then call Francis Barthelmez or whatever. But to try to solicit, to try to fix it yourself, you're just gonna create a bigger problem for
And it
everyone.
just doesn't work.
It
That's what I
doesn't
said in the
work.
beginning.
You don't have
There's
any
no-
authority
yeah,
to fix it.
Exactly. As I said in the beginning, there's no model in real life or in the research that shows when board members go outside their role or
No.
superintendents go outside their role to solve a problem. I don't see it working.
But as a board member that has trained, we should know when we need to step down and when we need to refer
Good point, yeah, sure.
to the following level, not yourself, but,
Absolutely.
this is,
That power thing, people think we have more power than we actually do.
Like that one guy
Yeah,
said.
yeah, we're not, and then we're not gonna be the investigators for the district, that's why, we have a chain of command, things work that way. We're not gonna, the whole thing about teachers thinking we can hire and fire them on the spot, I was like, I don't know why they think that. I was like, we don't have that power, we don't have any of that power. We can refer you, like you said, start your grievance process and all that stuff, and if it gets to us, then we can make decisions on that stuff, but, yeah, it's,
And the trustee role really is well defined. And like the law
Yeah.
says, we need people to play a certain function. They're gonna do X, Y, and Z. And people said, I'll be willing to do that. I'll take a vote, take an oath. And then it's very specific. That's why I was saying an effective board and superintendent team understands their respective roles and they follow those. I heard a comment about the
I
comment.
was just gonna say that, and that's, I want to do those things. I'm a problem solver. So I want to, solve problems. So a lot of times people say, oh, well, you don't want parents to sign up to speak at the board. It's not that. I nor the board can answer those questions. So it actually looks kind of weird. We just have listened and we can't have a
can't
two-way
respond.
dialogue. So I'd rather invite them into my office and have a dialogue and solve it instead of just sitting
Staring.
here and.
deer net, deer
And then
net,
they feel disrespected, because all you can say is, thank you,
Yeah.
after they've poured their heart out.
Uh-huh.
And as opposed to, and we did have one time a parent that signed up to speak about some security thing, and I didn't say, hey, don't speak. What I said was, would you like to meet with the superintendent before the meeting? That way she maybe can address your problems. And it was, they felt heard, and they said, this is what we wanted to be, this is what we wanted, and then they said, we're not gonna speak there, we already have our address, our concern addressed.
And again,
Well,
it's
I'm
not
just
because
saying.
trustees don't care.
Yeah.
It's not that at all. They just have a specific role that's written out. And it's needed as a matter of function. If the quarterback on a team decided, man, I ain't doing this, I'm gonna transform the role, it would be the most whacked out play. I mean, it just wouldn't work, right? Or if the bus driver said, what, I ain't gonna, fuck. You didn't want that kind of system. So why do we have it up here at the highest level?
Right.
So in the short version, strategic versus tactical. The law says that you all practice strategic oversight. That means it's that big picture far out. Again, I might say this as 100%, but if you find yourself kind of talking about the day-to-day, and it's not just an information or a learning opportunity, there's a chance that people might be getting down below the line. If your superintendent is having to fill so much time because they're way up here in the big picture far out 25, 30 years, they might not be able to be giving their staff the attention they need. Now, they're out there with you, of course, but again, you have a very unique role that she can't do, and she has a role that you can't do. So the short version of comes out of the Senate Bill 1576, where you're practicing strategic leadership, not tactical, down the day-to-day, but strategic far out. Because if you don't do it, no one else does. I don't know about you all, but I wouldn't want my third grade teacher thinking about, 30 years from now, I think the district should be buying. That's okay for a little bit, but you need to be teaching this kid right here, the little runny nose and right, all that stuff, right? Want their head appropriately in that space. All right, so now we're gonna get into some scenarios. Now, I'm gonna warn you that these could be potentially sensitive. I don't know your history. I like to read bios, but I do not know. But I'm willing to take a risk because let's be real, the work we do is hard. And what I've done is over my 9 years, I've collected some scenarios that were very typical, that were common, and that line up with the research. In other words, when you read the challenge here that the board members face, I'll ask you how you might respond. What are some key takeaways? What should this board member, this whole board consider in responding to that issue? And then how it lines up with the research. Again, that's what the purpose of it was. My disclaimer, it's not about you, I promise. Your board president, like I said, superintendent, didn't tell me anything about your history. It's not about you. It's about 5.5 million Texas school children who need us all collectively to be on the same page. Because I guarantee you, what people think about public schools sometimes is what we heard about one board a long time ago in a faraway land. It doesn't matter what the other 1,000 boards do, right? It's, well, what made the news? It's not what I'm seeing at all is great, functional, good behavior. It's about 5.5 million Texas children and their numbers growing. You do a good job here, it impacts and ripples throughout the whole state, I guarantee you. It's also not a chance to discuss and analyze yourself, right? We're not doing that. We're not gonna analyze you or evaluate you. We're not gonna evaluate her. It's just an opportunity to shine a light on governance, right? We're not gonna analyze your staff, et cetera. We look at governance, the research that we found, and find out what happens when you put it into play, and does it really matter? So the first scenario, take a moment to read it. I got this call in my first year at TASB. I was green, didn't know a whole lot of what I was doing. I was fresh out of central office in my hometown, and this board member tells me, I tell the superintendent calls me and said, hey, my board member said that they need to sit in on the hire of the athletic director because it's a high profile position, right? And I thought, that's tough. He said, it's a tradition here. It's been going on way before I got here. He said, my question as a new superintendent is, do I continue that? What degree do I let them get involved? Because it's a big position. And if it's a tradition, I don't want to ruffle feathers. I just got here. So you see the scenario with that new superintendent facing, it's tough. Now, talk about, let's be real honest, why might that board member be interested in investing and protecting that hire?
Because it's who they want?
This is what? Because of what they want?
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
what else?
personal.
It's on the quarterback, no, on the season.
What else? I mean, are there some legitimate reasons that they
Yeah,
want to make sure
if-
they get the right person?
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, for a town that size, I mean, it's gonna be noticeable. They also could have had some history with
If the
a
history,
prior
yeah,
person.
see.
And they're like, man, we can't let that happen again. The community knocked down my door. They put signs in the yard. I mean, they posted about us on the internet, right? So
Previous
nobody-
superintendent made a bad hire decision that didn't know about sports or
Yeah, right.
something, and they just feel like they could offer insight. I don't know.
And every Friday night was rough. It used to be a great thing. People came together and cheered. Now it's the culture, just right. It's tough. And I'm not saying that football is here or there. I'm just saying that's the reality that people deal with. We gotta be honest about that. We're gonna have tough conversations, right?
It's Texas.
Now, the superintendent, what is working for that superintendent? What is in the superintendent's favor? Think about the policies, the law, what it affirms, what we know about who hires who, regardless of how high profile it is. What is in his favor? If he should say, no, I don't wanna do that. What is in his favor or her favor?
Isn't the law in her favor?
Sure,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The education code and policies all talk about the superintendent's right to assign staff, to hire, to make sole power and authority to make recommendations, right? There's a bit of check and balance. The superintendent has the sole authority to make recommendations. Some exceptions might be if the board hires an auditor, who reports directly to you. But they'll make a recommendation, the board gets to approve it or not. And oftentimes they want to respect that person's decision, because if we ask our superintendent to do a big job, move the district forward this far, then we want to be understanding about the resources they need, even if it's people. Oh, you need that person to do what we're asking? Not who we would have picked, but we trust you, right? It's a balance. How might the board navigate this situation so that they can respect the superintendent's authority to make a recommendation, but still have some say-so in the quality of leader they bring to their community in the town. There might be some collaboration opportunity.
Can maybe share what they each think is important
Absolutely.
in that position.
Good.
I don't know, have we ever been involved in an interview?
Not us.
No.
Way before us it happened.
I think it would help if whenever we have new board members and they go through their training here in central office or through their, meeting with each assistant superintendent, they need to know that, admin is the people that interview those high-profile
Sure.
positions.
So an awareness of new board members, that there are people who have a process for this. And as a board member, you might be concerned about making sure there's a good system in place for hiring, not just high profile, but every profile. I mean, who's to say a third grade teacher isn't high profile? They may not be visible, but we know academically the importance of that role, right?
Yeah.
So good, talk about what's important to you, what else?
And like you said, have a system, like it's a group of people that does the interviewing, the hiring. It's not one sole person,
Yeah,
it's,
yeah. I agree.
and put that committee or that group together from different, avenues.
People who are trustworthy, who know the district vision, who might end up working with that person. I like the way one leader put it. One superintendent said, my board and I talked, and we all agree that we don't want to only, and it's a smaller town, we don't only want to hire coaches. We're going to hire coaches who are also teachers, right? And so that was just that kind of thing. And for another district, like, we don't need that. We have X number of people, we just need the coaches. Again, it's your community's decision, your culture is going to dictate. But you all can decide ahead of time, what's the profile for, we talk about shared leadership. What do we want every person to be able to do? Well, that person might meet the standard. One board said they hired a search firm. It was something different. We hired a search firm to bring us our superintendent, the top quality candidates. And again, there's no one way to do it, as long as we do what the law affirms and recognize that that's the superintendent's still authority to make a recommendation. But I think the challenge was it was a high profile, and that's true. A lot of people are gonna see that person working every Friday night, every whatever Thursday night. They're gonna see that person working. They don't always see what happens in the third grade classroom, even though we know it's important. My next question, what is one, and I kind of already hinted at, what is one unanticipated consequence of this hire? Think about the other hires in the district. If they don't get this red carpet rolled out, board members sitting around talking to them, what is an unanticipated?
It's not equitable.
Yeah, it's not equitable. And so I'm going back to the third grade teacher example. I'm a third grade teacher. Man, the law now has changed. The whole legislative session decided that we need third grade literacy and numeracy goals. House Bill 3. Third grade math reading goals, fifth grade math reading goals, right? That's huge, right? In my opinion, I just became high profile. I'm so important, my grade level of subject is so important, the state wrote a law about it. The board should be interviewing me, right? Next time I go to a district, I want all 7 board members and the superintendent interviewing me, offering me a nice package because I'm in a pivotal role. If a teacher didn't get that same treatment, then I'd be like, I don't know about this district. Where are their priorities? Right? But that same teacher said, I went through a committee about peers. I got a briefing on the vision of the mission. I was asked about model participation and furthering that. That's great. Maybe they're talking to their husband who is that athletic director, and he might say, or she might say, I got the same thing. It was a committee of people who were focused on this, right? Just very consistent experiences. I think you get that idea. For the time's sake, let's move forward. Here's another example. This was a large district, big district. It's probably my 3rd year when I was at Tasman. So let me explain what's happening. It's a large district, so the superintendent has a pretty big cabinet. Sometimes they call them executive leadership teams, ELT, pretty big cabinet. That superintendent was always busy, so that superintendent couldn't respond to every single board member's request for information, whether it was a report or some kind of update outside of a meeting. So he had given the board members access to key members of his team. He had a level of trust there, and he felt completely comfortable. So that, for example, you could go to the assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction or student counseling services and get a report. And they could get it to you pretty quick. That kind of scenario. Again, large district, it was quick and efficient. He's new now, coming to a system and said, hey, I know how you've worked in the past, but I gotta reorient my staff. I'm not the same superintendent that left, I'm a little different. I wanna get them up to speed. Can you just suspend that practice of requesting information through them until I get them up to date? If you need info, come to me. I'll do my best to get it quick. It might take a bit longer, but just give my folks a break while we adjust some changes. That's the scenario. What are some of the potential negatives and downside of it, and what are some of the upsides of this?
If a board member is more about them, it's them, they need all the information, then I can see where it got to them. But if the board truly trusted this new superintendent, they would respect it and respect it to know they're gonna set their goals and their priorities in line with their executive leadership board, like you said, and get them all in a line. Because maybe they don't like the same programs that we're using, they're gonna switch to a different program, they're gonna do this and that. Doesn't wanna give us bad info while he or she's setting up, their governance for their district the way they wanna run it. If we respect them and in the hiring, then we sit back and say, okay, that's fine, and we get with them. If it's all about us, then we make a big stink about it and try to go around them. And all that does is cause toxic nature where that superintendent doesn't know what to trust you with then and vice versa. So,
I like that you said that if it's about us, we might respond differently. But if I know it's about the system and what they need to be successful, because they're working with kids, I can respect that. And you mentioned in the beginning, you mentioned about responsible school governance. That would be an example. It says I have the right to access information, but I realize the timing of it might be a little hard. If my goal as a trustee overall is to see the system serve kids well, then I'm gonna use my rights carefully. I'm not gonna just relinquish them, because I'm gonna have the right to it. And as a board member, you need information. You gotta have it to do your job. But I recognize there's a balance. Because who's generating these reports?
Staff members.
Staff members. And what are staff also doing?
their job.
Why do you hire them? Has anyone ever interviewed personnel and said, except for very key roles, what is your ability to generate a report? Probably not, but you ask teachers that question? If it's not a data report, we're not concerned about how, right? It's, what are your instructional abilities and talents? What I'm getting at is that you have to ask staff members to take away time from the learning, developing other staff members to, doing plans, just to make reports. That report had better be good for the business of the district, right? I'm not saying it has to be, because the law doesn't say that, but it needs to be good, because your role as a trustee is to do what? To steward the outcomes of these students. It's a give and take, but you need information.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna dare tell you to cut down that, because you have to have it.
I'm not really sure if information that we would need in that situation would not already have been available to us.
Good point, good point. So go deeper. What kind of information may not be entirely helpful, and what's the motive behind it versus what we need to do our jobs?
Should be mad about something.
Well, it would depend on what it is that's happening at the time,
Yeah.
Perhaps we need data information from something that's important or that's gonna come up at a meeting or something. And we wanna have it in our hands. Maybe we didn't get it right away because of the situation of a new superintendent coming in. So that, I'm pretty sure that if something like that were to happen, most of us would already have a report in our hand.
Good. And you mentioned important, that's the key word. The board typically, if you think about your role, you're majoring in things that are important, that might have a longer time span. I don't think many boards, often is the case, again, exceptions apply, have something where like, ooh, if it's not by the end of today, we can make a vote, right? You have the information ahead of time. I hope it's not that short term, though, but you're right, it's important. So what data is important to me? Goal progress updates, key reports, safety reports, right? All the stuff that takes a little timing and planning. It's not always a quick, I need this in 2 hours. She might tell her staff that because the work she does is different. A principal might, but for the board members, you have a little more time. What's your hand?
Yeah, I think, well, that one was, I'll just be honest with you, that was very difficult for me because we had the same superintendent. I don't know how long Lloyd was here, like 10,
About
10, 12
Almost
years,
12.
something like that. So we had already worked through all of those, and he grew up here, so we knew. So it was easy to call Brandon or to call Francis or, I mean, he already, I mean, he knew we were doing it, he was okay with it, you don't have to bother me for whatever, right? So that was very difficult when we got our new superintendent, even though, I mean, but just because it was difficult doesn't mean that I didn't have to do it, right? So it was difficult for me to work through having to ask everything because I just wasn't used to it. But then
It wasn't out of disrespect.
you just, yeah, it wasn't out of disrespect that it's just, I just wasn't used to doing it, right? So, but at the same time, I really was convicted that if that's what she wants, that's what we have to do, not, and I didn't do it. At first, I'm like, I didn't think I'm gonna do that, right? But, I mean, I'm just be honest, it's hard to, when you're used to doing something for 12, 14 years, and then, but, you gotta do it. I mean, if that's what your new superintendent wants you to do, you just have to do it because you're part of a team. And that's one thing that I'm really excited about the Team of 8 training, because we had it before, and we didn't really all respect each other previously on some other board members, so it was hard to have a team of 8, right? But I think we've seen that with Dr. Ball coming in, that we can really be a team of 8, like, you know, we had been before. But even though, like, in my mind, I was used to doing something a certain way, that didn't mean that I had to keep doing it that way. You have to respect your, I mean, and people say that we're her boss, right? And technically we hire her and fire her, right? But she's really the boss, unless it's something to do with policy or, you know, whatever. Day to day, she's the boss. So we have to learn to respect that. So.
But we'd say that, we didn't ever really step out when if we would talk to somebody. If it was really important, we went to Lloyd.
No,
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that specific scenario says temporarily suspend the practice
Yeah.
of going directly to members of the leadership team, which was difficult for me,
Yeah.
you know, to stop. But then I'm like, okay. And even when I do call her and say, hey, I'm gonna ask Brandon this question, and then Brandon will say, I'm gonna share with Dr. Ball that you asked me that question. I go, well, I know, but she already knows I'm asking the question, right? Because they know that in order to build a good team, you have to have trust. If you don't have trust, then there's no way to build that team. And so I think to me, I'm just speaking for myself, it was difficult at first. I think I've seen the benefits of it and really respecting that request.
Now, let me show you why that's also important. You mentioned, for example, that policy, and every district pretty much has this. If a board member communicates with a staff member, even at the superintendent's blessing and awareness, that superintendent needs to be made aware. It's not just good practice, it helps requirement. Are you all familiar with the tracking requirement? I know the older board members might, or the more veteran board members. But the law said that if board members request data, up to a certain amount of data or reports, it has to be tracked by the district. And it has to be calculated as an expense. In other words, let's say I came in the district, I'm a new board member, I was like, man, I wanna know what's going on, whatever. I asked for a report, it's 5,000 pages. The district is required to report. Trustee Orrin Moore requested 5,000 pages of data on X, Y, and Z report at an estimated cost of $3,000 to the district. It has to be reported to the community. The reason why was in response to board members, and here's the difference, acting individually and outside the body corporate to request data, and it was putting demands on the system. Remember, we already established we need our teachers to be able to focus, our principals, our superintendent, we need them to be able to focus on the business of the school. One board member asking for data may not be the whole will of the board. It may not be specific to the goals or the items at hand or the issue at hand, right? It could just be extra stuff. We're not talking about stuff you need to do your job. If that's the case, the superintendent's gonna make sure you all get the report, you all get the data. But if it's just, I just have my own personal curiosity, that's what the state wanted to address, that kind of issue.
And I think it's important that you say that, considering we have new members, because it's important that they know that, you know, when you ask for things like that, there's a consequence. I mean, it can cost a lot of money, it's a lot of time consuming for our employees, and whether it's us or even people that don't trust, you know, what we're doing and they're asking for things, it can be really time consuming and cost us a lot of money and time.
Yeah. And the superintendent might ask, okay, and you just have to respect, why do you need the data? And then if it's gonna take too long, again, the law requires that, if it's too laborious, it can't be generated within the amount of time, then it goes before the whole board potentially, and might say, hey, this is a request being made, is it the will of the whole board? If yes, then it has a different level of urgency, right? Again, as a body corporate, you all major in what's important. And so if it's important to one board member, yeah, that'd be important to every board member, or it's just satisfying one or two people's personal curiosity. And it's not the same thing always as doing the work of the body corporate. You have goals laid out, you have progress reports that you know you're looking for in terms of a specific path you're on. Yeah, you need data for that. But guess what? Even that's planned out because she needs a steady flow and you need a steady flow to do your job. And so the people doing the reports, they should know ideally a year, not a year in advance, at the beginning of the year. If they know the common assessments come out at this time, this report is typically available with TAPR. And again, there's a rhythm to it because it's important. Let's go forward. This is kind of funny, but it's one that I hear time and again from South Texas to North, East, or West. And in this situation, I won't say what it is because it might be revealing. But the board member asked the board president to put the student dress code on the agenda for discussion. There's a technical problem. The board member had an issue with this when the board member requested it because there's a technicality about it. Who knows what the technical part is? There's one technicality that makes it a problem for the board. And then she's a type A, she's a stickler. She cannot let it go.
Well, the dress code is on the, what is it called?
Handbook.
The handbook, the student handbook, which is something that we approve, isn't it?
And at a certain level, but not
Yeah.
matter.
Yes, and it's about timing.
The timing of it matters.
Doesn't have to be two board members that want to put something on the agenda.
It depends on board
It'll vary
policy.
on policy.
Yeah, we have.
For this one, it was a matter of discussion versus information.
Oh.
I bet you now said, because it was tricky, I did that on purpose. But it's a matter of discussion. So largely, the dress code, that handbook thing, it's an administrative issue, right?
Yeah.
And so the personnel in the district can handle that. It's not for the board. Now, they can be informed about it, but there is one catch, kind of what you mentioned. When does it become a board conversation, that dress code specifically? Think about it.
Turn this on.
When there's a problem with, you know, a community member, I don't know, having a problem with their student or something,
Potentially, but it's even higher than that.
When the student handbook comes to you for approval.
For approval, but even higher than that. I'll give you one more chance. It's policy FNCA.
The student code of conduct?
If it becomes a part of that, it's the dress code issue that involves a uniform. Remember that one? If the board decides that school uniforms will improve the learning environment, then they have to take into account the impact it might put on their families financially and resource-wise, and make sure that every family has to have enough time, like you said, timing, to get the required uniform.
oh, okay.
But until it comes to that level, it's not really pretty much the board's, you know, they don't take action on it other than adopting potentially. In some cases, they might adopt certain codes, certain handbooks. But in this one, it's administrative. And so that board member said, I want to be technical. And so I don't want to put on there as a discussion item. They have to be right. But the other board member asked him to put it on there. What might be her motivation?
She doesn't like the,
She might not like it.
she's, yeah.
She might want changing it?
I want to change it.
Community people.
Maybe she has, her child is,
Has purple hair.
yeah, or something,
Okay.
or, yeah.
I almost so bad to say something about that one, but I said I wouldn't mention details. I don't want to reveal it.
Because it's happened.
But
Yeah.
And so what's so interesting is that that board member said, wow, this is going to negatively impact some students. I don't want our kids coming here and getting in trouble for something that is not even just bad discipline. It's just how they look. Do we really care about that? I think we as a board should care about what really does create a disruption or problem. And if kids are going to get in trouble and spend time in the office and disrupt the whole day just because how they look, we don't want to fight that battle. But the other board member said, I understand. That's our heart as a board member. Again, remember that constant battle? That's our heart. We care. We love. We don't want any kid getting their day ruined because of how their hair looked or whatever. but we gotta be technical. And the rule and the law just says we can have an information session, but we don't discuss it because we can't take action on it. If it's a uniform issue, I'm all in. But you see the balance? Board members constantly have to balance their heart and their compassion with, my new role says that I live up here, but when I was a parent, I can advocate for this, or a teacher, right? So it's just that constant challenge.
So answer me this question.
Sure.
So if they come and present on something, say the principal wants to change something at the school, no more holes in your pants or something like that. So then they're gonna come and they're going to present us the recommendation that they want to put that in the dress code, right? So are you saying that as board members, we can't say we don't want kids with holes in their pants? Is that what you mean by discussion? Or what is our role when they wanna come do that?
So you correct me if I'm wrong, but typically, they probably have the discussion already with the superintendent, assistant soup, who they report to, a discussion on
Right.
campus, right? And then it would almost be like, here's the current policy, kind of updating you. Now, if there was some need to look into it, the board, as a body corporate, might be like, oh, superintendent, is a big concern, we recognize that is your right, your position. How do you feel about it? But I would just say, approach that area carefully, because we don't want to overstep that boundary. There could be overall, a vision that you set for a student appearance, student conduct, that kind of thing. But there are certain things that just don't fall within that jurisdiction. It is
So
larger.
then it's not proper to say, no, I don't like that. I'm just asking,
Yeah,
cause
I
I mean,
would
it's
say-
come up before.
Yeah, I would say it's okay to express how you feel, but just realize that, you're just kind of learning, and then it's respecting their area to not give any hints of directives. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah.
I
So-
know in the past, we've mentioned, years back, maybe y'all remember, that, when we have a dress code so strict, right, the administrators spend a lot of time when all the kids are being sent, because, the dress code, like when tucked shirts and stuff like that, wear a belt. Can we say, we understand that you guys are having problems, but perhaps we need to relax that a little bit. Nothing's gonna happen if a student doesn't have their shirt tucked in. And can we move on so that, for the sake of you guys not having kids in your office constantly because of the dress code, can we say something like that? And when is the proper time to?
Sure.
I know we've addressed it in the past, but
Yeah.
I just can't remember if,
So I think for this is my opinion, I could be a little off on this, hopefully not. I think for the same reason that you all would be concerned about the dress code, about the uniform, would apply to the regular dress code. Because you're concerned about the learning environment. And I think, as a board, I feel comfortable saying to the board, talk to your superintendent about how the dress code or the response to the dress code impacts the learning environment, and try to minimize that impact.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
case in point, there was an EOT member in a fairly large district, about this size actually, almost within 1,000 kids of your size. They said, I remember watching the principal and a kid have an argument at the first bell, and that kid in the hallway fighting back and forth. Eventually, the kid got hauled into the office and got a referral, got written up. And he says, I can't help but think that kid did not learn much else that day. Because at the first bell, they were having an issue. Like, I don't even want to fight that battle. And it's almost exactly what you said, and they let that go. So while it is in their domain to decide those requirements, I would just say, hey, ask questions. Here's what board member can do. Are we confident that our dress code policies and approaches to it really do help kids ease through the day with minimal disruptions? I like to feel confident as a board member knowing that our kids aren't being penalized for things that maybe just might not matter a whole lot. And I would say ask about that, right? It's not giving a directive, it's respecting where the responsibility lies with administrative staff, but it's still knowing that you're creating an environment for kids that, again, lets them move through the system as easy as possible with minimal disruptions. Does that answer it? I'm trying to be very respectful
Yeah.
of, yeah.
So we can ask questions.
Oh, yeah.
We just
Yeah.
can't
Absolutely.
say, I want this.
make any promises, yeah.
I would say by the time you get to there, it has to be a uniform issue, right?
And-
And then you're engaged.
And again, go back to the process. Look,
Sure.
for our, handbooks, student handbook, code, dress code, et cetera, there's a process. It's normally looked at by a group, principals, teachers, and it comes to us for approval. Now, when it comes to us for approval, if we have a question, yes, ask the question, absolutely. But is it something that happens during the school year as important, or is it urgent? How does it become urgent? Well, kids start walking out because they can't wear pants with holes in them. Maybe some kids stop coming to school because all their pants have holes in them, and they're not the $125 jeans with holes in them that they buy, Exactly. So, it's just something you handle, make a phone call, Dr. Ball, I got this concern, present it to me,
That's a good point. I think the board members, if I have to wrap it up in one statement, I would say, we want to know that we're providing the best learning environment. And some folks have gone so far as to say, let's get kid input on it, student input, student voice. And I share that idea because that would be almost the other end of the board member's voice, would be the student voice. If the kids create it, and it's within a regional boundary, they're gonna respect it more, and they're gonna take ownership for it, right?
Yeah,
Versus
that's a great
just
idea,
pass
to
down.
bring it to
Yeah.
Superintendent Advisory Council, the
Yeah,
student.
exactly, right.
Yeah.
But again, I think a board member is well within their range to say, look, we just wanna make sure that we aren't stressing the system, we aren't putting undue boundaries on kids. We want kids to come here and be able to learn and do it easily without, big issue. Does our dress code allow for that? Does it promote that?
Things like this and many others, we do a lot of it through committee work before we bring it to the board.
Exactly, yeah.
Just like our calendar, we develop 4 samples, then we share it with the principals to get their input, then we share it with ESAC, and ESAC is the Employee Superintendent Advisory Council, and there's a teacher representative from every campus on that, we get their input. Then we finally narrow it down to 2, and then the entire staff gets to vote on it, then we bring it to the board. So I know that in the past, the way I think that Southwest has always so done it like this too, is all those things that we know are gonna be like big ticket, hot ticket items, we take it to a lot of groups so we can get their input, and then we can tell the board, this is how the majority of the people feel or think or share with us.
And that's why I was saying at the beginning, by the time they bring your recommendation, the best teams have already run it through the campus approved plans and needs assessments, they look at other data, the TICA, and they bring a lot of data to bear when they make a recommendation, because that's what the board expects. They feel confident. So the first 3 scenarios you saw, they dealt with just board member relationship. If you notice, they were all internal, just the whole scripture, get your house in order, right? It dealt with just this connection. Let's do one more layer. This goes from the personal layer, board member to board member, board member superintendent. It goes to the system impact. Look at what happens in a large system. And we'll just do one of these, and if you like this scenario, we'll do one more, but we won't move on to the other big topic. I titled this scenario Lacking Leadership. This was my 3rd year when I started. Here's the scenario. The climate in the community was pretty tough. They're a small enough community to where the board, when they were having issues, the community really felt it. They sided and kind of picked sides. Very split. They were getting a new superintendent every year. Remember Alsbury's comment, a superintendent turnover, what happens? They were getting a new superintendent every year. In fact, they had 4 superintendents in 5 years. They were getting pretty much one every year, and I was coming in, had just got a new superintendent. Very high staff turnover. Is that surprising?
No.
No. I mean, again, when I counted, I thought, this was Alsbury's work come to life. I thought it made a perfect learning opportunity. The board was very split. You had 3 people who were just really in favor of the new superintendent. And mind you, this is a transition workshop, so we're starting my expectations up front. 4 who were very, very much against him. I'm sorry, 3 against him, 4 who were for him. The board members low commitment to roles and responsibilities. I don't know how the outgoing superintendents were, because they weren't there. I got there with, the new superintendent. We had done a search, just like we've done, They were well known by TEA. They're well known.
Name that district.
They're well known by TEA. And they're also local news favorites. Anytime the news wanted a juicy story, that's where they went. And it's unfortunate, right?
Yeah.
They're sitting there bored, like, what are these stories? Let's go right to what's happening with me, right? They would come down there and do a news story. They would find a board member, interview them. The board member would say that not helpful stuff, not speaking, right? It's not helpful stuff. Very low performance. You talk about you all do common assessments. You all could tell me what you use for data. They couldn't tell me. They just didn't know what they're taking. It wasn't a priority. They're talking about all the fighting and going back and forth. 97% of the kids qualify for reduced lunch. At the time, there were about 1,100 students, a smaller district, 1,100 students. When I talked to them fairly recently, they had lost a quarter of kids down to 750.
Wow.
You talk about how that impacts budget. Can you imagine that? You go from 1,100, almost 1,200 kids, down to 750. Quarter of your kids. It's a lot of money walking out the door. Mind you, they're buying out superintendent contracts. And they're not rich. They're just, you see the kids, right? Just throwing money out the door. Declining enrollment. So my question to you now, you got this sheet. We already talked about when board members understood how these conditions look in their system, they were leading moving systems, right? Which of these conditions do you think these board members understand? Which ones do they talk about in their system? No.
Maybe a little bit of community develop,
Yes.
because, but you're listening to a split community. You probably have a split community as well.
You're only the second board that has ever picked up on that one. And I'll be honest, I didn't first pick it up. A board member brought to my attention, hey, they understand community involvement, they're just not using it well. And I went, that was very astute, yeah. There's only the second team that never picked that up. What else do they, so probably none of them, but maybe that one.
Maybe.
I just don't know how to use it. All right, you seen that, those reality shows, they do like a wife swap, husband swap, they swap everything nowadays.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just sad. Pray for it, y'all. Imagine you got thrown into a board swap reality show. They said, man, that's not.
Oh,
board.
my
They got
goodness.
it going on. Let's bring them in and let them fix it. What would be a governance level question that you would ask? And I know I gave you a crash course in governance for the new board members, the veteran board members, a review, you know the routine. What would be a governance level question that you would ask? Or answer the other question, what productive first step might a governance team take?
If a new board member stepped in a swap?
No, like you all now are the board.
Uh-huh.
We just dropped you in that situation. What would be a question that you would ask?
That I would ask?
Governance level, yeah.
Oh, man.
Think about all the stuff that you learn about governance. You decide that big picture, the what.
I'd
She
ask them,
decides how.
I'd ask them, what do you think your role is here?
Okay, good.
Right.
What is your role?
Yeah,
Sure.
like, and then I
Good.
would say, number one, they don't have their leadership in line.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
What is your interest,
What is your interest? What do you personally think
your role?
is important in your role? Yeah.
Why
I
are
like
you
that.
here?
Why are you here? Right?
Do
Because that
you,
goes back to responsible governance. It's an
Mhm, yeah.
ethical issue. That's not responsible what they were doing.
do you trust me?
You trust each other? Good. Anything else? What first step might you do? Now you have complete control of the district. You're making decisions. What first step would you do? Well, through your superintendent, what first step?
Also find out.
Bring you in.
both-
Yeah.
Bring you in.
Yeah.
Oh, I was there. I'm gonna tell you what happened. I'm gonna tell you how it ended.
I said, also find out from the community what both those issues are, what both,
okay.
what each one believes in, or what's going on for both one, and
Sure.
see if we can start figuring out what that middle ground is.
So they're loud and vocal, so get their input. Good. I like what you all said so far. Know their roles, right? They have to understand their roles. If nothing else changes in this district, what do you think is gonna happen? Be very specific.
Lose those students, like I said.
They're gonna, why are they gonna lose
Well,
students?
They're
they're
gonna have
gonna
to
get
do it.
taken over.
Gonna take it over by
Yeah.
TV, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? So let's talk about what happened. It sounded tough.
So-
They did exactly what you all said. They got some intense training. It was mandated because TA stepped in. It was mandated. They got some intense training. They learned their role and they began to own it. They got responsible. They said, no, you keep buying out superintendents, we're gonna take over. You need to stick with it and make it work. They got some stabilization, the board members started kind of learning their roles. They asked us, what do we want? And they started saying, you know what, we gotta be responsible. We're overshadowing kids. Long story short, the superintendent so they did buy him out, by the way. I went to do that workshop, just like I did for you all, a transition workshop, we've done a search. He had been there 2 months maybe, bought him out, it was tough. That's when TA stepped in. And so, 6 years though, been there 6 years though, changing, think about Tom Alsbury, changing the trend. They finally started doing well. Look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, third from the bottom, that bullet. The academics turned around tremendously. And it was not easy work. Again, this was 6 years in the making, but they were growing every year, so they were feeling comfortable. I found out because I ran across a news segment that had been interviewing them, and I thought, let me reach back out to them, because it was a while since I last talked to them. Complete change around. Got a nice new education foundation in the community. It's just, they're all now in it for the right reasons. They have stability. It's incredible. But think about the governance principles that matter here. They decided to realize shared leadership means that I don't get on the board for my own personal agenda. It means that I build it better for the next person. The superintendent told me they were just running just to kick each other off. I mean, it was Tom Alsbury studying just real life. They said they didn't care about the mission. They didn't know what the assessment scores were. They were just running just to kick every other time. But they stabilized it, got deeply engaged, community came aboard. Now, y'all, the students go to the conferences and present. All you heard about this was just the adults acting out, doing nonsense. You would have thought the kids just didn't or couldn't do anything. But when I saw them at the conference, I thought, dang, these are some good kids, right? Smart.
Did they have a complete new board?
So funny you ask. It's not a big town, so some of the board members who were there, who were creating some of the challenges, they're back on the board, but their attitude is different. It's interesting, right? So they have been off and back on, back and forth, off and on.
They learned their
But-
lesson.
Yeah, which is a big thing for them, right? They were willing to grow and change, and
Yeah.
that's the respect.
Yeah, because you'll have some that don't learn.
That's right.
Yeah, that's true.
And when they get back on the board, it dives down again. But they had a hard check. I mean, they really did. But I think, this is my opinion, I've seen this enough, but I think this way. When you taste success, you're like, this is actually kind of neat. And the more you taste it, the better it becomes. Because being dysfunctional, let's be honest, it can be exciting. And sometimes, you know, if you're in a loser culture, you'd be like, wow, it's big talk about how badly we got blown out at the football game. Or, you know, who did the next drama. You anticipate that. But then when you see success happen, like, this is actually pretty neat. I've seen kids who were known for being like the big tough kid. The first time at the AB honor roll, they're like, I'm an AB honor roll kid now, right? I've seen it time and again. I'm sure you have too. It just changes. So that was it in a nutshell. But again, you saw these principles come to life. They buckled down and they learned. They honored the fact that tenure matters. They started having conversations with the superintendent about respective roles. The board member was no longer running the schools. The superintendent was no longer fixing everything, right? They were sharing that leadership role. And we can ask questions about community engagement, how to monitor. But the big thing was respecting those roles, because they were trying to do too much. Remember how I said there's no model in real life where in the books that you see a board member stepping over superintendent or superintendent stepping over the board member? That was happening and it never worked. But when they got to their roles, they said, you know what? I'm a trustee. This is what I do, nothing else. If I want to do that other stuff, I'll get off the board and go do it. But the trustee role says this is it, right? It's written down. And they did that, they saw the results. What are your thoughts about that?
You know how they work.
It's pretty remarkable, right?
Yeah.
You turn them around.
It's, I don't think that the community and some board members too, I don't think they realize the impact that the school board they don't realize how important it is, because you're the voice of the community, right? But you have, there can be certain factions in the community that aren't really a good voice, right, for the community, right? They're more of, we have one school district in San Antonio that is super politically charged, super politically charged. The council people get behind, I mean, they're just like, and they've been taken over from
How's it
TA.
working out for them? It ain't
It's
working
horrible.
out, right?
And so they're always in the news. they're always getting a new superintendent, their teachers, we ended up hiring a lot of their teachers because they're sick of working over there. And it's because there's this little faction of people that that they're not there for the real reason, but the community has to realize that and say, you don't want to be in the news. Like, we're very rarely in the news unless something as good is happening, right? But it's something that the community doesn't realize. You need stable people on your board that are there for the right reason and are not trying to stir up community problems,
Not
right?
just the board, the staff too.
Yeah.
Because they work together.
Support the
100%
staff.
right. And typically, if the time is enough, I show 3 different scenarios, 3 different districts, all have a unique situation. And the common thread that I asked is exactly what you mentioned. What was the common thread in all these? Well, it was when the board turned around, the community followed. It doesn't always happen the same way. Typically, the board turns around, shows the community what success looks like. Because for a lot of the people in the community, you're the most visible elected leader that they're gonna see and know. Most people don't know who their representative is. The savvy people do, but they're busy. And they will see you and come talk to you. But that's the common thread. In every scenario, the board was enough to turn this district around and eventually the community, oh, they're serious. The other thing you mentioned is this idea that, back to Alsbury, why did they behave that way? They didn't know. They really didn't think that board drama could matter. Board superintendent drama could matter. But it does. It has a negative impact. And it brings systems down or it can bring it up. And for a community like that, where the district was the largest employer, that meant a whole lot of, jobs, a lot of resource for them. So let's jump forward. Big question. This is where you all are a little bit vulnerable and open with your superintendent. I know you've had this before, but the law says that you practice oversight. You gotta have data. I'm sure you don't wanna go out into the community and get blindsided, you need information. What do you need from your superintendent to be successful in your oversight role? You talked about how important it was, and if it doesn't get fulfilled, systems don't do well, what do you need from her to succeed this year in your oversight?
Trust to give us the good and the bad.
Yeah, honesty.
Yeah, we want the good and the bad. If it's bad, we still wanna know it. Don't-
Honesty, equity, adequacy for everyone, just, I wanna feel that, whatever she feels, she's gonna let all of us know,
Good.
and we're gonna solve it together if it's something that we can work on.
So you want a true pulse of what's happening.
Exactly.
And then you can decide as a team.
I don't like sugarcoating, I don't like lies.
Yeah.
It's gotta be facts, truth, honesty.
Because when we do that, we do get to the point, like you said, you guys had with Versa from Versa, because then she knows what she can trust us with as far as everything and how we would think, and we get to the point where there are those little things that we can trust her just to make that split-second decision, or
Right.
we don't have to worry about coming to us, like you said, with the, urgent compared to, leadership. And we only do that by working together, I mean.
So true. What else?
It's important for me to know that, that I'm trusted. I want my board members to know that they
Okay, good.
can trust me.
Sure.
I want our superintendent to know that she can trust me. And I want them to know that I got their back.
Yeah.
Good.
And I want our superintendent to know I got her back.
Yeah.
Because I want our superintendent and this board to succeed. Because ultimately, if our team of 8 is successful, guess what? So is our community, so is our staff, and so is our kids. Those kids will be successful because it's a big chain and it takes all of us.
Yeah.
We can't have a weak link. So that chain needs to stay strong. And it either starts here or it winds up here, one of the two. But regardless, we're still one chain.
What else? Oversight, you gotta fulfill it. You're the only one entity the law requires to do it. What do you need to master? To
Well,
continue to do it.
yeah, we need clear-cut goals, right? So if, we need to know where we're lacking, so we know what, how we're gonna improve that. we, we've been in this community for decades. I mean, everybody, right, has been in the community for decades. So there's also, I think that, and I think it's going well, that the superintendent would respect what we know, right?
Sure, yeah.
Because it's very difficult to hire, when you work with a superintendent for 10 years, it's hard to get a new superintendent and them know, we're in a little bit better situation though, because Dr. Ball was here before. But that they're new to the system and we have to respect their ability to lead, but then she has to respect our knowledge and our history to know, to take that into consideration before, you know, making some big old change, which I think she's done very, very well. But to succeed, it's like Daniel said, we have to trust her and she has to trust us. And it's easy to say that, but you have to really work at it.
It's a good
And, you
point.
know, when you have a new leader, even though you know that person, and I mean, I consider her my friend for decades now, but it's different, the relationship with a board member and a superintendent, to get that level of trust versus just being a friend, right?
And even though, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, I mean, we've had the opportunity to test that since she's come. And, I think because she's here with the right motive and I'm here with the right motive, we've been able to come to that, okay, yeah, we can work together. You honor my knowledge, I honor your knowledge, and we're here for this reason, because if you don't do that, it could just be a bomb. I mean, it could be just a catastrophe. And so I think I think that's important. I think we've all had to do that, coming from a 14-year leader.
And what I was gonna say is that although we hired Dr. Ball, and Dr. Ball has been in the district before, it's been 10 years. So there was a lot of changes in those 10 years, and we've grown a lot. You know, the guidelines have changed, so, you know, we gave Dr. Ball enough time to get used to learn, research what has happened. And although that has happened, you know, we really do have trust in our superintendent. And I think that as a team of 7, I speak for myself, but I don't think that they think differently. We are getting along very well. We respect each other's opinions. And at the end of the day, you know, we're still a team, regardless of what happens. And I'm really proud to say that I'm very comfortable with how we are right now and with Dr. Ball as well.
It's good.
And I think, you know, for me, this was the first district that I walked into that was not a broken school district. The 2 former places where I was at were broken, and this one has been really, it's for me, because I get so easily stressed. It was very stressful because I don't want to make a mistake, you know, because it is a high achieving, it has great staff and things like that, so it's very different than if you walk into a school district that's broken, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. And while you have the floor, and y'all can chime in if something comes to your mind about what you need to be successful in oversight role. While you have the floor, answer this question for us, please. The law says that you are the CEO, you are the chief manager. What do you need from the board to be successful in your management role?
I'll be honest, the ability to know that it's safe, that I'm gonna make a mistake. I'm gonna make a mistake as much as I don't want to.
Again?
You know, that I will make a mistake and that we're able to move on from that together. I know that I don't know what answer people usually say, but I think that for me, it's just knowing that I'm not like Dr. Murphy. I will make mistakes, and I know it's been hard for people because he was here for so long.
Yeah, but he made mistakes.
He made mistakes too. Yeah, there were mistakes.
And know that, you know, I will make mistakes, but I will make the same one over and over, you
Yeah,
know, and
no.
I'll learn from it and go from there.
Well, it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
I think that was an issue when we first hired Dr. Ball, is that we all get along really well, and we're not, why are you doing that? How come you did that? Why did you, we don't call her every day. I mean, it could go a couple weeks. I mean, we just don't do that. We're not
That's
that
good.
board, right? But
Sure.
the districts that you came from, they're that board. So it was hard for, the way I feel, it was hard for her to think, "Ugh, I can be in charge. And they're not gonna wanna fire me tomorrow if I make a mistake, right? So it was learning on our part to, like, reassure her that we hired you because we know you can do the job. We're not always gonna agree on everything, but we're not, I don't wanna say the name of the district, but we're not where you came from, right? We're not, we have superintendents for a long time. I mean, you know, we don't, they leave when they're ready to retire.
Yeah.
We've never, well, they did fire one time like 40 years ago, but, we don't do that because we've learned, well, how to hire the right one, right?
And if mistakes are made, we just give them enough time, you know, we can resolve it. I know that things will get
To let
better.
them do their job, that's the main
I
thing.
love the attitude, let them do their job.
And sometimes the mistake might be on our part. You know, it might be because we were used to doing something for so long a certain way, and maybe that's not the best way under our current leadership. You know, we need to learn to change and to accept, you know, and I think we're there now. We're comfortable saying, look, okay, we make mistakes as well. You know, you're not the only one that's human here. You know, we're human too.
And that's big of you to ever say that. Yeah, we're your boss, but we're all humans up here, which is why that conversation becomes so important. If you can have a conversation, you can work through anything. If adults talk, they can work through a lot. It's not until they go quiet, start withholding, and then having chew talks over here and not sharing. That's when things start getting sour. I have not seen a team fail because they aren't smart. I've seen them fail because they quit communicating. And then these two only talk to each other.
And that's what helps a lot here, is that we can communicate with her. We've already seen that we can just say, you know, I tell Mona I need to talk to Dr. Ball, when is she available, you know? And we can just come in and talk to her or set an appointment, and she's very open to all that.
Good.
And that's really good. A lot of times they're not, so.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to keep that flow going. It sounds like you have a really great thing here, keep that going. But the last couple of minutes, kind of push you on the spot. One of the things that was mentioned that's needed for good oversight is to have some clear goals. Can you give them, and for me too, a preview of kind of where you're leaning towards establishing priorities for the district? And maybe if you already have kind of worked out with your team some timelines, when might they see an update on some very clear goals that you might recommend based on what you're seeing in the system?
Sure. So when I had the admin retreat, the team wanted to hear from me what the 3 goals were. And simple in the sense of student achievement, making sure that we continue with our B rating or better, you know, so student achievement. The second goal being student attendance. That has been something that student attendance affects the entire district, you know, whether it's funding and then also the student achievement part and everything. And then the customer service, making sure that we take care of our staff. So we communicate that to each other on a daily basis. When it's senior staff, that's what we talk about. When it's our principals meeting, that's what we talk about. So those are the 3 things that we're going to get really good at and not that we're not, but make sure that we maintain that. And with attendance, ever since COVID, attendance has dropped, you know, at every school district, but don't want it to drop here. So with the board support, the board supported us financially to improve student attendance. We want to make sure that we get those 2% gains at each and every campus, so we can then improve our student achievement and better customer service.
Questions for her?
I would say
I
that-
think those are awesome.
Yeah, especially customer service, but I would say also not just how we treat our employees, but how our employees treat the community. Because it might be that one phone call that turns a parent from taking their kid to ID and then keeping them here, so don't let your bad day or whatever affect whoever's on the other side or whoever walks through that. I mean, I know a lot of our people are gonna have to, you know, security is a huge thing, and getting used to that nobody can just walk into school anymore, or having to watch the camera to buzz somebody in, and like, you know, that gets annoying or whatever. but don't take it out on that person coming in that just is trying to, you know, pick up a kid or somebody. So just how we treat both sides of the house.
To me, student achievement is the number one priority, because this is why we're here.
So you want to hear potentially in the future and updates. You want to hear about the dimension that's really encouraging parents to treat, or teachers to treat parents well, to recognize that's a big part of customer service.
Yes.
We want to make sure that we get some robust conversations around student achievement. And she'll probably bring some indicators back for you all to come in and tell.
I would like
here's how we're
periodic student outcome discussions.
making. Okay.
And if I can ask the board something, you know, I know that sometimes it gets kind of long depending on who's giving the presentation, but last month, that's what we want to do is start to give the common assessment data a little bit more often, so y'all can see where we're headed and where we need to make some adjustments.
Yeah.
Does it hit on what you were mentioning as well?
Yes, the
Good.
student outcome
Good.
discussions or presentations, either way.
Seeing how kids are growing, seeing where they're
Right.
short, where they're.
Because that's the only way we have, too, of determining whether or not we're meeting goals,
Right.
whether or not our superintendent is being effective as well.
Those programs that we approve to fund, if they're working or not working, and blah, blah, blah. You know, giving them enough time to work or not work.
That common assessment, that was new to us. I mean, we've never, that I remember, we never saw that. But just, I think I said it there, or I was just thinking.
Yes,
to
we're
have
gonna make that change.
Yeah,
the
maybe a-
percentage, like what was our goal and what did we get?
We saw it maybe a little bit under Velma, but she didn't call it that.
Well, not benchmarks.
Yeah.
Well, I think they
was-
changed.
Yeah, they used to call them.
But we did used to get periodic assessments on that.
Right, so what I don't want to happen is whenever the scores do ever get released, that the board is like, oh, this is a surprise, I didn't know. I don't
Yeah.
want that to happen.
It'd be important to look at growth, because again, the scale just shifted. And you could have grown from last year and still end up with a lower rating.
Mhm.
And so that's just no fault of anyone except the state. So
Yeah.
keep that in mind. The big question is, did we grow? And I
Yeah.
bet you're gonna see that you did.
And the more we know, then the easier it is for us to answer the questions when the community asks, or when our family members ask, hey, why are y'all this, right? Then, one thing I really appreciate about our curriculum lady, Dalila, is she always puts like, it looks so dismal, right? You're like, ugh. And then she's like, oh, but look at the growth. And then you have to like take yourself back to that, because you're seeing what the community's gonna see in the paper,
Mhm.
and they don't really show the growth. So if we know the growth, then
The
we can
narrative will be
share that,
important.
yeah, we can share that with our community, so that they're not so, down on.
And there's nothing wrong with, seeing where we might be a little weak,
Yeah,
so, so we can address it, take the
Yeah.
bull by the horn and
Mhm.
let's make it strong,
Or we can ask, what is it that you're doing with this area,
Absolutely. That's a
Um,
great question to the board, because you're not saying, did you do this, or I want you to try this, you're asking, what are we doing?
Right.
So you can be informed.
yeah,
And they'll tell you, we tried this, it didn't work, so we're on plan B, right?
yeah.
So I think it sounds like it's important for her to equip this team of 8 with the common message, and you all kind of come up with a common message. It might be, look, we grew from last year. If your score is lower, I pray to God it's not, but if it is lower, it's important to know, well, what's the key concept? We grew last year and still got a lower score. We would have been an A,
Yeah.
would have been this.
Well, right now, it's a very funny situation because of how it, backtracked and it changed. But other than that, once we get used to it, I'm sure that we'll we'll have better
You'll be back
results.
up there.
Yeah, we'll have better results.
Real quick, did y'all take ISO training, the newest board members, the evaluating improved student outcomes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I think they'll do it.
We've done a lot of training.
Okay.
Yes,
I think at SLI, they did it in SLI.
Okay, good, okay, almost there.
And we redid ours too, so.
Good. So last comments and questions to the board superintendent, anything that you want to know of your superintendent, kind of preview, or anything you want to share with them, Dr. Ball?
You can stay, Roger, we're almost done.
Oh, I just don't have any.
No, we're good, but just, yeah.
One thing I think is that you have to have the freedom to tell us everything you want to tell us, right? Like, if you think we're overstepping, then you need to call us in the office and say, I'm not comfortable with you doing this, and, I mean, I might look at you like, but, I mean, we're all level-headed, we're all good people. So, I mean, you know, we're gonna listen.
Sure.
So rather, but I would do it like right away, not let it build up into something.
And in the name of adjusting to the routine, that might be appropriate for the first year. Maybe you have more formative checkups where you look at how we're performing as a team.
This board's grown so much in the last 5 to 6 months, tremendously, I can tell you that.
The only one thing that I might recommend is that, and I know we've talked about it, and I know we'll do, is that we truly do put our board operating procedures
Yeah, we need
in
to
writing.
do that.
So like that, I think, you know, for me, then it's easier to say, oh, look, we said we weren't gonna do this, or we said we were gonna do this, and we have that, so. I
When
would
were the
think-
last updated?
We don't have
We
it.
don't have.
We don't have one?
I think we did board priorities,
Yes.
but we didn't get to
Yes.
that part.
We worked with Region 20 to do it, and we were on that committee, but then the third person that was on the committee, she took it all home, and then we never saw it again.
I can start you off with
Yeah.
a really good template.
Yes.
The newer one.
Yes.
It's true.
And we can
Please
scratch,
send it.
plug and play. It'll be quick if you want.
Please send it.
Yeah, we
And,
could use it.
and then the other thing we probably want to be putting in writing is your goals.
Yeah.
And we'll start with those three, and maybe some time identifiers as far as when to hear reports back.
Okay, and just to make sure I understood, we were okay that with this January, we keep the same evaluation, and then like
Yes,
summer
yes.
work.
So
We
we
also
have time
need
to work on
help,
it. I'm sorry.
Picking a new, developing a new superintendent evaluation,
Sure,
which
yeah, I
we've
can-
already talked to you about getting us a training on that.
Yeah, I can support you all on that.
Yeah.
If you wanna work offline with the committee, I can do that. You tell me how you wanna do it.
Okay.
And we'll try to just keep it to where it's costing your time, right? So if
Okay.
someone want a whole board training, we'll do whatever. Again, we are invested in you all because we did your search and in everyone, but we wanna make sure we support you all.
We probably need a timeline, though. We probably need to say we need board operating goals in 90 days.
Okay.
We have to set a timeline, or we're just not gonna get it done, so maybe you can work on a
Yes,
timeline
I'll
for
work
us?
with,
Sure.
I'll work with, yeah.
And I'll start with that template, and then we can scratch or add what we don't
Yeah.
want on there. Sure.
And, it's for the cultural thing, it's worked for us. But now we're seeing new blood come in, and some of us will be not around much longer, on the board, possibly. We need something in place so when, something like that happens.
So they
it's
don't
there.
have to go through
Yeah.
what we've been through and trying to develop, it's,
Yeah.
Yeah, just hand them the stuff, let them.
yeah, and then they can, refine it if they need to, or make changes.
Okay,
I'm not
thank you,
gonna
Lauren.
keep Y'all have worked hard, a lot of time. I'm gonna turn it back over to you. I'm gonna do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much.
And I just got one question, guys. It's really important, turkeys. Okay, who's going to Southwest and who's going, I just kind of want to make sure we have both.
If you don't mind, if everybody's going to be here, I'll just invite up everybody and let everybody
Yeah.
know. Is everybody
Okay.
able to attend?
What are you talking about?
They're giving out the turkeys.
Oh, yes.
What day is that?
It is on Tuesday, November the
Seventh.
7th.
1 to 4.
From 1 to 4.
Oh, the election day?
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I can come.
Okay, so if y'all don't mind, let me work so I make sure I have like equal with, I'm dividing
Well-
senior staff and I'm
Okay.
dividing everybody. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Remind me.
Fine, that's exactly what I was going to do right now.
I will.
You can put me on the lake shift,
Okay,
if
sure.
possible.
Okay, absolutely.
I live next to Legacy.
Yeah, and you're
fine.
going to Southwest.
And then of course, if you don't like the time or the place I put you, you can always change it.
And everyone's coming to the trunk or treat?
Yes, we are.
That's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
That was gonna be dope.
And just remember I just left my mind, I'm so sorry. No. The brown bag, sorry, the brown bag.
Oh, yeah, I was
November
confused about those
14th,
dates.
because This room is gonna be used for elections.
Okay.
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 And the meeting is on at the end of the month, right?
You'll remind us, you'll remind us.
Yes, I'm gonna send that.
I don't know how, I had
Thank you
missed
for
that. I
the
didn't have
training.
that.
It was awesome.
Thank you so
It
much.
was great.
Meeting adjourned 8:34.